At least I have the radio to keep me company.
On 93.5 and 107.5, The Fan.
They're on a 13-point run, and they've cut it to 2. Pacers in desperate need of a field goal. Here's Halliburton to the left wing. Sends it outside. Siakam gives to Nembhard. 2:16 to go. Nembhard left edge. Shot clock down to 8. Nembhard played by Antetokounmpo. Driving it right hand. Kicks it right side. Siakam is open. And that is a much-needed 3. Shot clock reset to 14. 1:22 to play. Indiana has been reeling lately, but the Siakam 3 has pushed the lead back to 5. He takes the inbound pass, left wing, backs it up to the top and gives it to Nembhard. Nembhard down the left side, confronted by Antetokounmpo. The shot clock at 6. He backs it up and buries a 3 from out on the left edge, right in front of Doc Rivers, who calls a timeout. Boom, baby!
Mark Boyle, Pacers Radio Network last night as Indiana now up 2-0 on the Milwaukee Bucks and halfway towards advancing out of round number 1 in the 2025 Eastern Conference NBA playoffs. But, of course, now it gets even more difficult because you go into Milwaukee and probably expect some tweaks or changes to the Bucks' approach. And as they always say, once you get game number 3, the hardest game is the closeout game. But the reality is this: for the Milwaukee Bucks now to come back and ouster Indiana's postseason plans, or ouster Indiana, I should say, the Bucks now have to win 4 of 5 and still have yet to get the one that they would need to win in Indianapolis. So good news for Pacer fans in an electric and awesome atmosphere last night at the Fieldhouse. Good afternoon to you on a gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous and perfect midweek Wednesday here. Jake Query along with Eddie Garrison. The name of the program is Query & Company, and we thank all of you for listening and being part of the company here on the radio station. Last night after the game, you folks heard, and it was good to meet a couple of people yesterday that had heard Michael from Australia that had come in studio with me. So last night after the game, I went over to just walked outside of the Fieldhouse, went right down the street, and we went to District Tap, sat outside, and just kind of soaked in the atmosphere. And it was well after the game, and it was still, downtown was buzzing. There were a lot of people downtown. The weather was great. And I know that I harp on this a lot. Perhaps I'm just illuminating as to my seasonal affective disorder that I get during the wintertime. But there's nothing quite like spring or summer in Indianapolis, and especially when the Pacers are in the playoffs. And as I'm sitting there last night and I'm watching the crowd and the people, and then I walked back here to the building around 11:30 or so, all I could think to myself is, this is why the value of professional sports to a city. I know that people want to talk about it, understandably so, the salaries and everything else of the money that goes into public sports or professional sports. But for the public in general in downtown, that's why. Because, the pride that it pumps into the city and the boost that it gives the city at a time probably when we most need it was great. But as for the game itself, it was awesome. It was awesome, and there are a ton of things to unpack in terms of it. For example, going into the game and all the discussion yesterday from Damian Lillard, or about Damian Lillard, I should say, I thought personally it was really important for the Pacers to get game 2 because I just had this suspicion that Lillard was going to, you knew eventually he was going to get in rhythm. And I was curious to see how he looked, right, from a conditioning standpoint and just an involvement standpoint, and whether or not he was going to have a game. A lot of times a player comes back from injury or from a layoff, and you get super excited and intrigued about it, and then they go out, and after the fact, you go, yeah, I kind of forgot about that storyline because they played 16 minutes and had, 6 points, whatever. That was not the case with Lillard. I thought he was still an integral part of what they were doing last night, and even though he never got completely uncorked, he hit a deep three at one point that I thought to myself, see, that's what you've got to be careful of. Because he is a lightning-in-a-bottle shooter. He is a guy that when he gets hot can get him going in streaks, and then all of a sudden he's hitting from everywhere. And I was worried about that even last night. Is that lead started to dwindle, and the Pacers had it around, they maintained a 9 to 14 point lead throughout. And it is true that each time Milwaukee would make a mini run, the Pacers would counter it. And I thought Rick Carlisle did something brilliant. Maybe this took place a lot in game one as well. Maybe I'm naive to it, but I thought last night, so I'm not saying that it was unique to last night, but its effectiveness was noticeable last night, and that's this. Indiana clearly has the better bench than Milwaukee. Clearly. The Pacers are a deeper team. Yeah, you could make the argument that when a fully healthy Damian Lillard is there, that the 1-2 of Milwaukee is as good as any 1-2 in the NBA, truth be told. But the Pacers have the better bench and depth. This we know and we've mentioned. Now, I will say I thought very early on that one of the things that, Eddie, you and I had discussed yesterday, I thought, see, you know where I'm going with this, right?
You're talking about Ben Shepherd?
Ben Shepherd checked. He must have been listening. He checked into the game.
No, he didn't.
He checked into the game. I'm sitting right there, Eddie, 5 feet away from where it happened. He ran down and checks in and says, Shep's in. And Rick Carlisle's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Wait, what? I don't know if there was a miscommunication. It was kind of a funny moment. It was a lighthearted moment. So he didn't go into the game, but he ran down to check himself into the game. And then immediately they called off the dogs. I think it was in the late first quarter or early second quarter.
Yeah.
I think there was simply a miscommunication of whether Carlisle called out the wrong name or he heard it wrong, whatever it may be, or it may have been that Carlisle simply changed his mind. Flippant and lighthearted is the point I'm getting at. But I thought, see, Shepard's going to get in. I was right, and then he did not end up getting in. But the Pacers' bench is better than Milwaukee's. But what Rick Carlisle has done, and maybe this has been the case and I've been asleep on it, but it is noticeable in the Milwaukee games, and that is that the rotation, when Indiana goes to their bench, he is leaving Pascal Siakam in for the most part with that second unit. Then Siakam is the first to come out and get a breather when the starters come back in. So at any point, the Pacers have a go-to player on the floor. With Milwaukee, if Giannis comes out, then you don't really have, Lillard, I guess, will play himself back into this positioning. But if Giannis goes out, there is not a clear go-to guy on the floor for Milwaukee. Now, they have good players, don't get me wrong. But in terms of the straw mixing the drink for them, Giannis goes out, then it just kind of becomes by committee. At any time for Indiana on the floor, they have at least one guy that you know if the ball goes there, that's where it's going, right? And so every time Milwaukee would start to make a mini run, then Indiana would counter because they had a Siakam on the floor or a Halliburton on the floor that could steady the ship for them. Now, late, obviously, as you just heard from Mark Boyle, the 2 threes from Siakam and Nembhard that kind of gave them a little bit of breathing room and then essentially put it away were fantastic. But in Milwaukee had really, and Lillard hit a shot where I thought, you can't let this happen. You can't let him get going, and he never did fully, fortunately. But I would anticipate that at some point in this series, you're going to have a Damian Lillard game. Because to me, it did not look like the conditioning was as off as what you would expect from the time that he missed. The other thing that I noticed last night, and when I say it, people are going to go, yeah, this is why sports talk radio hosts are full of fluff and hyperbole and exaggeration. So let me explain what I'm about to say. And it borders on blasphemous in this town. Not blasphemous, but like it's a dangerous thing to go there in this town. Okay? But Andrew Nembhard, who I have said that he is the one guy, and if you look at starters for the Pacers, the one player that I've said the position that I felt could be upgraded from starter level is Nembhard. Having nothing to do with a knock on Andrew Nembhard. I want him on my team 8 days a week. But in terms of a starter, that position, I always feel like should be somebody that's more like 6'6 to 6'8 in today's NBA. But nonetheless, Andrew Nembhard, more so than Tyrese Halliburton, more so than Pascal Siakam, more so than Miles Turner, and more so than any player, maybe Victor Oladipo's in the same group here. But Andrew Nembhard, dare I say it, and hear me out before you call me out for making a ridiculous leap of a statement. Andrew Nembhard's got a little Reggie Miller in him. And that sounds absurd because you go, Reggie Miller, he's the greatest player in franchise history. He's, you know, his jersey numbers hanging in the rafters. He has great moments in Pacers lore and is one of the most clutch performers of his era in basketball. And a guy hits a three, step back over Giannis, and you're telling me he's got a little Reggie Miller in him? But it's more so this. It's not the fact that he is totally unafraid of the moment. It's not the fact that when you least expect it, he's the guy that hits a shot that bails you out. It's more this. I'm not talking about in terms of the volume of clutch moments. I'm not talking about the energy of the clutch moments or even the wow factor of it, of clutch moments in comparison to the career of Reggie Miller. It's more the calculatingly cold nature of Andrew Nembhard, when I say he's got a little Reggie in him, he hits a three. First off, he has two different plays where he breaks like four different ankles for Milwaukee. But he hits that three and then stops, and everybody in the building, everybody on Georgia Street, everybody on Mass Ave, everybody on Broadable Avenue, everybody in Fishers, everybody's going bonkers that he hits this three, and the one person who is totally unfazed by it is Andrew Nembhard. And Andrew Nembhard has this vibe and this look of, that's what I'm here to do. What did you expect? I'm not afraid of the moment. Yeah, I'm Andrew Nembhard. Have we met? That's what he looked like. And then as he takes, and I've seen this now on like 3 or 4 occasions where he has hit massive shots. He hits that shot, and then he stops, and last year it happened, I think it was during the in-season tournament when he hit a massive shot like that. But when the moment, he has a delayed reaction, and then he gives this smirk. He just gives this smirk where he's like, yeah, I did just do that. And you didn't think I was going to, did you? And that confidence and that swagger is the Reggie Miller vibe. I'm not saying that he is that level of player. I'm not saying he does it at that level of frequency. But that organic confidence. There are guys that act confident. You know they're not confident. They don't believe that. They're a total poser. We all know posers. There are guys that act like they want the moment, and deep down, they are terrified. Andrew Nembhard has that swagger where he's like, okay, yeah, you like that, didn't you? And then he turned around. He hits the shot. He turns around towards his bench like, you guys like that, didn't you? He realizes the crowd's going crazy, and then because hitting that shot and delivering that dagger and being that cold and breaking a couple of ankles just before it, or just after it actually, wasn't enough, he stops and he looks at the Milwaukee bench and he smirks. You like that, didn't you? That's the kind of swagger that this team, truthfully, that exemplifies right there the overall attitude of this team that I don't know that you had a year ago. Andrew Nembhard hit shots a year ago, but he didn't have the complement of the look over and just kind of the swagger that I think that team feeds off of. And each player in their own way kind of represents that, and that's why this particular group is so much fun. Now, I wanted to get to this. After the game, I'm looking at the energy spilling out of the building, and one of the local TV stations is down on the street, and there are fans gathered around, and they're screaming into the camera, and the lights are on, and they're all holding up their towels and the yes sirs flags, and I'm thinking to myself, this really is like I got in a DeLorean and I've gone back in a time machine. This is vintage Pacers playoff basketball mood, Indianapolis, and I love it. I love everything about it. I'm here for it, right? And then I get home and I look and I see somebody tags me on an ex-post tweet, okay? Which do you go with, Eddie? Do you say tweet or post?
I still go tweet.
Because it's not Twitter anymore, right?
Nope.
But yes, I would agree with you. I am team tweet, okay? But I get tagged last night, and every once in a while somebody sends something, and, it's esoteric. You don't want to sit here on the air and read about something that happened on Twitter because you're probably only speaking to like 3% of the population. But Rick Carlisle addressed this after the game, which we're going to play in just a second here, okay? But I was tagged on the following post. The wine and cheese crowds for any professional teams is weak. It's the playoffs. The second half was quiet. Fourth quarter was quiet until Siakam hit a three, as opposed to the Reggie Pacer days. I don't know if that came from somebody that was at the game, and maybe it just didn't translate on television. But all I can think to myself is, now, there is some truth to this. It has nothing to do with an Indianapolis wine and cheese crowd. This is true everywhere in the NBA. Watch a game and you can see it. At the end of the half, to start the third quarter, it is because the arena now, no matter where you're sitting, there's a restaurant or a bar or, fabulous concessions and everything else there that people go into until they go back out for the second half, and it is a later arriving crowd to begin the half. That's true everywhere. I've noticed it in L.A., I've noticed it in Charlotte, any of the new arenas, because of the amenities, it takes people they get more caught up, and then they're like, oh, the game's back on, and they come back out. So the first couple minutes, sure. But the rest of it, that crowd last night, it was an awesome atmosphere. I'm telling you right now, just like in the movie Major League with Bob Uecker, Harry Doyle, when he's like, come on, Cleveland, wherever you are, let's hear you. Right now, the city of Indianapolis, wherever you are, let's hear you. Because the weather's awesome, and last night, that atmosphere was electric. It was awesome. It's why we live here, and it's why I've always said, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but I really do mean it, that Indianapolis is the greatest city in all the land. Because people come together, they celebrate, and everything else. It was awesome. Now, Rick Carlisle's been to several playoff games in his time as a head coach for the Indiana Pacers. As an assistant coach, he's been to several playoff games. He's seen great moments. He's been to Dallas, where they won an NBA title. He's been on the bench in Indiana, where they went to the NBA Finals. He's been there for, some of the great teams. I mean, on and on and on. The brawl teams, you name it. And Rick Carlisle, I'll let him speak to it. Rick Carlisle, your thoughts on the crowd last night after the Nembhard three and in the fourth quarter and the atmosphere from the opening tip to the time the game ended.
The building was as loud as I've ever heard it. I've been in here for the finals games, and in 2000 in a lot of conference finals games, and it's never been louder than it was tonight. So a big thank you to our fans, because that really helps us.
There you go. Thank you to the fans. It was awesome. Now, Eddie, from your perspective in producing the game, can you hear it? Can you tell?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the start when they go up 8-0, I thought I could hear it here in the studio. I mean, that place was on a different level. And then when Siakam hit that three at the end, it really got the crowd back into it, because it's like this fear of, oh no, oh no, oh no, are they gonna, they're gonna lose the game? Are they gonna blow the lead? Because Lillard just hit that, 30-foot three-pointer to bring it within 2 for Milwaukee, and then the Pacers don't call a timeout. They let the guys on the floor figure it out. Siakam hits a three, they get a stop, and then Nembhard hits a three over Giannis. Very LeBron-like, Jake. He did the good old LeBron. I'll back this out, look at my right hand, step back to the left, and hit the three.
I mean, listen, that Nembhard's ball handling is outstanding. I mean, he is a fabulous ball handler. There's just, I'm telling you, there was a lot to love about last night, but Nembhard's got a little juice to him, I'm telling you, which I love. I'm here for it. I thought Obi Toppin made a couple of really nice plays. Every player, this is what to me was the best thing about last night. Every player that played last night had was involved in at least one moment for the positive. There was not anybody that you look at the box score and you go, I forgot he was out there. Every player contributed in some way, shape, or form. And Milwaukee, the other thing, too, that is if you are Indiana, that you have to feel good about, is they not only withstood a couple of flurries from the Bucks. They got out to a fast start, did the Pacers, and then the Bucks made some little mini runs and threw everything they could at the Pacers, and the Pacers seemingly answered those bells and staved it off. Milwaukee did a nice job of weathering the storm of the Pacers early and not allowing it to get completely away from them like we saw in Game 1. But each time that the Bucks then countered, I thought the Pacers did a good job of stopping the counter. Obviously, the end of the game, maybe it was a little bit even more close than people would have liked. But, Bobby Portis, say what you want. I did find this ironic. I found it ironic that Bobby Portis, who is the instigator for the Bucks, who's the guy you love to hate, who's the guy that seemingly, whenever their things get chippy, Bobby Portis finds his way in the middle of it. I found it interesting that the crowd at Gainbridge Fieldhouse stopped chanting Bobby sucks just long enough to give a rousing ovation to Lance Stevenson on the video boards. Now, there's an irony there, right? Let's be real. But that's the kind of guy, Bobby Portis is the kind of guy that you love him when he's on your team. You hate him otherwise. He played really well last night. And he had some big shots for them. And a game where Giannis goes for 36, a game where Damian Lillard feels it a little bit from the outside late in the game, and a game where I'll say role player and a Bobby Portis is shooting the ball from the outside as he was, and yet it's still not enough for Milwaukee. You've got to feel good about that if you're Indiana, because now the only thing Milwaukee really seemingly has left in their arsenal, and Kuzma wasn't terrible last night. The only thing left that Milwaukee has in their arsenal that Indiana has yet to see is a game where the threes really start falling for Green and Prince simultaneously, and the floor is spread. So seemingly Milwaukee has shown their best, and Indiana has been able to withstand it. But there's other stuff to talk about, including several people. Been a long time since I've been to a game, and I've gotten the number of questions that I got about something happening in the game like I did last night. And I could answer exactly what took place. I saw a halftime show that I think I finally mastered and figured out. I know Kevin Bowen has talked about how he thinks you could win on Simon Says. I have a theory on what makes that halftime show what it is. And we have NFL Draft to get to today as well. So a loaded show. Austin Croshere going to join us coming up 1 o'clock. Casey Valier from the Colts joining us 2 o'clock. And just on the other side, a guy who you heard this morning and who asked Rick Carlisle a question that got Carlisle a little peeved last night. Talking about James Boyd. We'll get into the NFL and the Pacers with James. We'll do it next. Halfway through hour number 1 here on a Wednesday. Jay Query along with Eddie Garrison. Query and Company is the name of the show. Austin Croshere about 30 minutes from now. Indianapolis Motor Speedway currently testing underway for the Indianapolis 500. The 109th running of the Indianapolis 500 is delayed. The testing that was to be underway, it is still planned that they will get in veteran refresher course and any rookie orientation that needs to take place. But an issue with timing and scoring right now has things under delay, and they have not yet taken the green flag for that. Pacers last night getting the green and the checker in game number 2. They have led all but 2 minutes of the series so far with the Milwaukee Bucks. James Boyd, you heard him this morning, joining us now here in studio. And James, I thought personally, I was just saying, the two things that I noticed, number one, Andrew Nembhard's got a little bit of Reggie Flair in him. I mean, that dude, to put it lightly,
Yeah.
He's got a little bit of dog in him, right?
Yeah.
But I think that they did what they needed to do in holding serve so far in games 1 and 2. But that's not to say, and I did say before yesterday, I still maintain it, that the winner of last night was going to win the series. I don't think just because they're down 2-0 that Milwaukee is down and out. I think there's going to be a pretty strong counter coming up on Friday. But I want to ask you this. You've covered a lot of the NBA. It seems to me like there may be, and I'm not trying to make a storyline that doesn't exist here, but I'm just going by observation. It doesn't seem to me that the Milwaukee roster has the cohesiveness than does Indiana, and that there could be dissension amongst that group is the wrong way of saying it. But if there is a team that I could see kind of packing it in, perhaps, it wouldn't surprise me if that was. I don't expect it, but it wouldn't surprise me if that happens to Milwaukee. Now they're down 2-0. But your overall thoughts on the series so far in Game 2?
I mean, to me, it just seems like the Bucks are overmatched, even though they have a top 3 player in the world. I mean, Giannis has been incredible, but he can't do it by himself.
Right.
Lillard yesterday, early on, I got a little nervous there. I was like, man, he's making some shots. Then he went cold, and he was, just another guy. And that can't happen. You can't just be another guy. Those two guys had to play their A game for them to even have a chance to win. Whereas, to your point, Jake, they're deep on the Pacers side. They have a bunch of bodies that can go out there and make good plays. They play team basketball, and it feels like even without their best stuff, they still find a way to win. Whereas, again, Milwaukee, they need perfection.
Well, the Pacers clearly are better 3 through 8, right?
Oh, 100%.
Now, James, I thought the real positive takeaway for the Pacers last night is the fact that not only did they take Milwaukee at one point, especially when Indiana got out to the fast start, I thought the Bucks did a nice job of weathering that storm and not letting it get out of control.
Yeah.
And then I was waiting, poor Kyle Kuzma. I mean, I was waiting for him to get a stat. Finally, it happened. And then
waiting for him to get a stat is a crazy way to describe the way he's played.
But he was okay last night. I think it was a little bit in his head, to be honest with you. Once he got going, he was okay. Bobby Portis played very well for them. And for the Bucks to look at it, if you are Milwaukee, James, would you not have to be somewhat alarmed by the fact that you had that kind of a game where you got contribution outside of Giannis and Lillard hitting a couple of nice shots from, say, a Portis, and yet you still weren't able to get it? It feels like Milwaukee, aside from a Giannis heroic game, is exhausting all efforts to try to get something here.
Have you heard of the 2-1-1 theory?
2-1-1 theory.
In the NBA basketball?
I've not.
So the Justin Tinsley from ESPN, he threw this out there years ago, and I think it's a genius. His theory is that you need 2 wins from your best player, 1 win from your second best player, and 1 win from like a role player to win the series. If you subscribe to the 2-1-1 theory, that was the Bobby Portis game. He's not going to score 28 points again. I wouldn't bank on that. It's possible, but I mean, what are the odds on that? So that's out the window. So the math isn't really helping you in my eyes because, yes, Giannis will be Giannis. I expect Dame to come alive at some point, having returned to playing basketball. But even with all of that, it feels like you let one slip, especially because you cut it too late and you had a chance and you blew it.
Well, for the Pacers, the good news is this. And I agree with you in the fact that I thought going into that game, James, that Indiana needed to win that one because you knew that you were not, so long as he's now playing, you're not going to get the majority of games the rest of the series where Damian Lillard is playing his way into form. You're going to get a vintage Damian Lillard at some point. So if you have Damian Lillard on the floor where he's not 100% Damian Lillard, you have to take advantage of that. And if you surrender that game, you're in real trouble. So I thought for the Pacers to, in a game like that where Milwaukee had one person on the floor at all times, you kind of still didn't know who they were, the Pacers had to capitalize on that, which is what they did.
Oh, 100%. I mean, they took full advantage, and you look at the way they played. I mean, the one thing that I've appreciated about their collective unit is that you still haven't maybe gotten the A game from Tyrese. I know he played pretty well last night. Shooting the ball hasn't been a strong suit, but you continue to get other guys involved. I mean, does Benedict Mathurin look shook? Does Jarris Walker look like the lights are too bright? And so, again, when you're kind of coming at them in waves and you have this continuity and this belief that's kind of trickling down throughout the team, whereas on the other side, is there much belief over there? Do you really believe you can win the series? I mean, Giannis believes anything. I never doubt his faith, because you think about where he comes from, his backstory. He's going to go out there and literally try to drag his team to victory. But the other guys,
which he can do, by the way,
he can, and I believe he can. I believe Giannis is good enough, especially at home, to perhaps win a game by himself and just, 52 points, whatever he rebounds, and just drag you.
We saw it in
win.
the Game 7 of the NBA Finals, right?
Exactly. But I don't know about the other guys.
I'll tell you one thing that has happened for the Pacers that, and I'm putting the cart before the horse here, but I'm saying it because I think it points out part of why also they're up 2-0. This season in general, but certainly this series to me, and you tell me if you disagree, if there was any question from anybody going into this year, the importance of making sure that they keep Miles Turner with this group of players moving forward, this playoff series, for anybody, I would like anybody to show their face that still thinks that Miles Turner is too soft or whatever it may be. James, they have to re-sign him, right?
Yes, I think they have to re-sign Miles. I think that Miles has handled this as great as you possibly can for years. On the trade block every year, consummate professional, never complains, goes out there, does his job. Is he an all-star player? No, but he's a very, very good one, especially in today's NBA.
He's also critically important, James, to the way they want to play. In other words,
exactly.
And I'll tell you the one thing that most benefits his marketability here is this. Maybe we're not having this conversation if Isaiah Jackson had not gotten hurt and we could see what player. If Isaiah Jackson had taken the kind of step this year that we've seen, let's say, from Jarris Walker in the last month, and he was already a more contributing player than Jarris Walker.
I see what you're saying.
But you know what I mean, in terms of where they were a year ago to now. If Isaiah Jackson had shown those things and had shown that he was a Miles-type player, then there's expendability there. We don't know, coming off the injury, what Isaiah Jackson's going to have. And if you lose Miles Turner and you come back next year and you try to run it back with this group, less Miles Turner, you're kind of back to square one here.
Yeah, you know what? I believe I asked Rick Carlisle about this. In today's NBA, his value is so high, Miles, that is, because he shoots the three and he defends the rim. And honestly, if you did get rid of him, there'd be plenty of suitors who want that. They're looking for that. I mean, how many times we've sat up here and talked about Lakers rumors, and Lakers are going to enter on Miles Turner because people value what he brings to the table. Now, obviously, the price point has to be correct. You know, he's not going to get outrageous, max money. But, I mean, if you got to pay a little extra to keep him, I think you do. And also, what he means to Tyrese, what you're trying to build here, what you have built, do you really want to get rid of the guy who's been through everything and not knowing, like, if you're going to actually upgrade?
Right. Well, and at a
you
position...
dodged the bullet with DeAndre Ayton, remember that.
At a position where you don't have a lot of... You don't have an insurance policy, right?
No, you don't. You don't have a contingency plan.
By the way, the DeAndre Ayton thing, I'm still convinced that was the Pacers power playing it to force Phoenix into paying more money than they wanted to.
Okay, devil's advocate here. Are you willing to sign a contract that says we have to pay you this much money because we think they will? Like we think they will?
I think they were willing to do it if it fell that way, but I don't think I think they knew Phoenix was going to match. They knew Phoenix was going to match.
Well, they should have told me because I remember that day. I wrote the whole story about DeAndre Ayton, Indiana Pacers legend, and it went up in smoke in like 45 minutes. I ran the story.
You got time? I know you want to get out of here, but you got time to stick around for a little bit more?
I'm chilling. This is my day off.
James Boyd with us. Austin Croshere, by the way, in 18 here. Aquarium Company on a Wednesday. James Boyd, I'll tell you the one thing, and I want to get into the Colts draft here in a second, but let me tell you one thing that took place last night where I finally had – I'm not going to say that I discovered or unearthed cheating is the wrong word. Some
I don't know
fallacy.
where you're going.
Okay. I have a theory now.
Okay.
Because the guy's unbelievable. A tremendous performer. Good under pressure, good in short bursts, delivers every time, leaves you and wows you each time. You don't see him often. But when you do, you're like, that is impressive. The Simon Says guy at the halftime show.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
you've seen this, right?
I've seen this, yeah.
So I know that Kevin Bowen has a theory that if you want to win on the Simon Says guy at halftime, and for those that are unfamiliar with it, it was the halftime show last night. Guy comes out. He's a high-energy guy. He's very entertaining. He's funny. He's got one group of people that stand along one side, looks like the beginning of a game of dodgeball, okay?
Yeah.
And he says, all right, I'm going to do this side first, and then I'll deal with you people on the other side in a second. And he does Simon Says. And he does it very fast. Okay, we're going to put our hands on our head. Simon Says, put your hands on your head. Simon Says, go ahead and wave your hands around. Simon Says, you're out, you're out, you're out, you're out, you're out. And you're thinking to yourself, how in the world does he know so quickly who is violating what he is doing, right? Then I realize, and then you're also saying to yourself, he's got like 6 minutes to get this whole thing done. I mean, if there's a couple people that are just really good at it, then what does he do, right? It finally dawned on me, James, it is happening so fast and it is happening with such a flurry that when he just says to somebody, you're out, you're out, you're out, you'd have to go back and look at the tape and do a review and find out.
Are you saying you want to go to the monitor?
Yes. I think it's entirely possible. I think it's entirely – no, listen to me here, though. He knows he's got 30 people. He's looking at the clock, and he's like, okay, I got 2.5 minutes to get this group eliminated. He knows –
Imagine Jake holding up the game because he's
happening
asking
so
him to
fast.
review this. Oh, my God.
It's happening so fast that he just – all of a sudden he'll stop, and he's like, okay, you're out, you're out, you're out, you're out, you're out. And he points to 9 people, and more often than not, they're looking around. They're like, okay. But you just assume – because he's doing it so fast. Okay, we're putting our hands in there, waving hands. Simon Says, wave your hand. Simon Says, wave your hand. Simon Says, put your hands down. Put your hands down. Run in place. Simon Says, you're out, you're out, you're out, you're out, you're out. People get so lost and confused in the shuffle of what they're being commanded to do that if he tells you you're out, you just assume that you violated it. And as the viewer, you're watching it and you're like, well, he tells that guy he's out. They must be out, right? It's pretty impressive.
Man, all I heard is you want to delay the start of the third quarter because you want to go to the monitor with Billy Kennedy.
It's better than this. It's better than delaying the start of the third quarter because there's still 18 people playing Simon Says, right? So he knows he's got to eliminate quickly.
This is true.
It just so happens last night that the final two happened to be a kind of funny but awkward non-dancing type, and a redhead at that, and a pacemate. So now we're going to have a dance-off between the awkward kind of geeky guy, I shouldn't say geeky, but not a great dancer, and, I'm sorry, it wasn't a pacemate, it was one of the dance crew, actual break dancers. So he's going to have a dance-off between the guy that
Pacers
looks...
hype crew?
Yes. So he's got somebody from the hype crew and somebody who looks the least dance-worthy of all going against one another. What an amazing coincidence of entertainment, I'm telling you. I think it's not totally on the up and up. That's all I'm going to say. NFL draft.
I love Jake's brain.
Colts going to stick at 14?
This guy is amazing. I think that they do, mainly because I look at 3 players. And actually, Eddie, if you want to chime in here, I was walking out earlier this morning, and he goes, hey, 3 guys going to be that I want them to get. Jahad Campbell, Alabama linebacker. Tyler Warren, Penn State, tight end. Michigan, tight end, Colston Loveland. I think one of those 3 will be there. And if they are, they'll take them. They're that good.
Now, here's the thing. Warren, by all accounts, is not going to be there, right?
I don't think so. I really don't think he'll be there.
I don't know that he makes it. Now, there was some talk. I can't remember who's at 10.
The Bears.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was talk that originally it was a foregone conclusion he's going to go to the Bears at 10. Now there's talk the Bears might not even get him.
Yeah, I know he's been mocked to like number 7 with the Jets. So he's been very, very highly rated. And honestly, when I was at the Combine talking to people, it sounds like he could definitely go before 14.
Yeah, I think he definitely goes before 14 right now. Loveland's the one that's interesting because, and James, I go back to this. You've probably heard me say this a lot, but I always believe this. For example, if if Loveland is the tight end that's available for you at 14, but you also feel like you need, let's say, edge rusher, okay? If there's an edge available at 14, and then your next, what is the Colts' second pick? What number are they picking second?
45.
45. So if you look at it and you say, okay, our estimated edge, we have a guy at 14 that we rate at an 8.5. At 45, we believe that in that area, the available edges are all a 7.0. If you have Loveland rated as a 9.0 as a tight end, but you look at it and you go, but at 45, there's tight ends that are available that are an 8.2, then you probably go with, at that point, the edge rusher because the drop-off from is greater.
That's
You see
certainly
what I'm
one way to
saying?
look at it. Yeah, for sure. I think that's a factor you have to consider if you are Chris Ballard and crew. But at the same time, 14 is such a fluid spot where you can still probably lean a little towards best player available. So I'm fascinated by that, Jake, because I do think that they could take that approach, but it's a gamble because you might think, oh, we got all this depth at this position, and then what if everybody gets snapped up before you get back on the board?
Now, here's another one for you. I'll give you the Colts have how many picks in this year's?
Oh, they have
as of
7 right now.
As of right now,
7, 1 in each round.
Okay. Over under of 4. The overall pick for them where they take a quarterback. Later than 4 or prior to 4?
Ooh. I'm going to go later than 4.
Here's my one draft prediction. I don't do mock drafts and all that kind of thing.
Oh,
right?
don't worry.
As I
I
always say,
do plenty of them for you and me.
they're there to be mocked. But my personal belief, and he may go, I don't know at this point where this player is prognosticated to go. So, I mean, it is possible that someone takes him higher than when the Colts start getting into that exploratory range at quarterback. But I think Quinn Ewers really interests them. I think they're very intrigued by Quinn Ewers, and I think Quinn Ewers is one that when you start getting into late third, early fourth round, if he's still on the board, I think you're going to have a lot of teams that are starting to think they're going to outthink everybody else by then reaching in and grabbing him. But I think Indianapolis is one franchise that has interest in him. Your thoughts?
I know they have interest in him because he did the top 30 visit, but at the same time, they do this a lot with different quarterbacks. I mean, a lot of teams do this with guys that they might not draft. You just want to kind of get to know them. And Chris Ballard was saying, you know, for down the line, you want to have a reference point there. The guy I would lean towards, you know, maybe in the later rounds, or, you know, if you really want to go like a day 2, day 3 guy, Will Howard's somebody that intrigues me from Ohio State. Has some dual threat capabilities, played a lot of big games, a pretty good frame, tough guy, leadership, all the things you want, the intangibles. Riley Leonard from Notre Dame.
They like him too.
Yeah,
right?
if you want to go like 5th round.
I've heard they like him a lot.
Something like that. And again, leader, tough guy, gives some dual threat capabilities. Is he the best athlete? Will it translate to the NFL? No, but I mean, Jake, I think the broader question you're kind of making me think of is who is going to be the QB3? Because in years past, they've kept 3 quarterbacks on the roster, and Sam isn't there anymore. So
who's going to be the QB1? Right?
I mean, look, I've talked about that ad nauseum. We can go down that road too, but it's a legit question. Would you want somebody there to? Do you want to invest a pick into that, just in case these 2 go up in flames?
James, here's my thought.
I mean, now we're talking about that's like worst case scenario.
Here's my old man yelling at clouds take. Okay. If you have a guy you selected within the top 5 picks of the NFL draft, and you took him because you believe in his potential, and you just think that there are a couple of areas of growth that need to be had before you have a franchise quarterback, if you are, and I know that there's been injury, if you are entering into year number 3 and you're still hoping those areas of growth start to sprout once you water them enough, you don't have a quarterback that should have been taken in the top 5 picks of the NFL draft.
Yeah, you know what is interesting about this? And I don't necessarily disagree because I think that so much has to go right for Anthony, and he's definitely behind the 8 ball here. You're asking him to do 2 things that he hasn't done his entire life, which is stay healthy and be accurate.
Right.
That hasn't happened. But on top of that, I mean, what does that mean for the regime? What does that mean for the guys who picked him? I mean, everyone gets on Anthony. It's like, oh, you should have stayed another year in school. No, he shouldn't have. You all told him he was a top 5 prospect. Jay Query, are you leaving $30 million on the table?
Correct. No question. I understand why.
So I'm just like, maybe the evaluation of him needs to be pointed more at the people who picked him.
Here's the thing. If you have the opportunity to come out and get drafted in the top 10 picks in the NFL draft and make that kind of money, regardless of how much time and development you have left, you absolutely have to go. Unless one of those picks belongs to the New York Jets and you don't want anything to do with that, because if you go there, it automatically means you're going to suck, right?
Yeah, it's like going to Charlotte in the NBA.
That much we know, right?
Yeah.
You go there, it's over. Austin Croshere, by the way, speaking of first-round picks, he was one of them out of Providence for the Pacers, going to join us other side. We'll talk about Game 2 next. To none on the Milwaukee Bucks, halfway home, if you will, towards advancing past the opening round of the Eastern Conference playoffs here in 2025. Joining us now on the always busy and shockingly available to be sponsored guest line, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so, Austin Croshere, the former Pacer, who you see both on television and in radio in his career analyzing Pacer games. And Austin, I'll get right to the meat of the matter, and that is now a 2-0 lead. Your overall impressions, whether it be the way Indiana played or the way Milwaukee played last night, your thoughts on game number 2?
Overall series, I think it's gone along the lines of what I thought it would be. Giannis is an incredible player. Lillard obviously coming off of the injury. But the Pacers are a better team, and I think that we have seen that in both of those games, the way that they play basketball, the way they share it, the number of players that get involved. I think it was 6 guys in that game, had over 14 points. And that's been the storyline for them all season long. And I can't say that I'm terribly surprised.
You know, from a player's standpoint, you would be an interesting one to opine on this because you would know. Which is, I guess, the bigger challenge? Once you are up 2-0, maintaining focus towards getting to the finish line of a series and being prepared for adjustment, or being down 0-2 going home and still maintaining the confidence that because of the fact you're going back home, that it is within still your grasp to get back into it?
Great question. I have to feel that if you're down 0-2, an overriding sense of urgency, of panic, of, hey, we have to dig down survival. You lose game 3 in the series and season is over. That said, I think that the Pacers and Rick Carlisle, they know, hey, you take your foot off the gas, you go back to Indy 2-2 with Giannis and potentially Lillard at full strength, anything can happen down the stretch. So the series is very much in the balance in these 2 games, and I think that the Pacers realize that. I think this is essentially the exact same team from last year, with the exception of Mathurin and Walker playing minutes. It's a veteran group, and I think that they're going to dig down. It's not the easiest thing to do, but I think that you're going to see a Milwaukee team that obviously is desperate.
Does Indiana have, Austin, more flexibility or versatility of things they can do or adjustments yet that they can make than Milwaukee does?
I think so. I think because of their team and the options that they can kind of play with, I think that, again, I've said this a couple of times, Giannis is arguably the best player in the NBA. I don't think he'll win the MVP this year, but he is fantastic. He can give you 40 points on any given night. But that team is kind of a one-trick pony. You had Bobby Portis have, an incredible game in game 2. You can't count on that. But for the most part, there's some iteration of Giannis being spectacular and other guys maybe contributing. Whereas the Pacers on any given night, you could have 5 or 6 guys go for 20 points. And certainly that flexibility of what they can do is there. The obvious concern is that at home you gave up 50% shooting from the field, 40% from the 3, and that makes your margin for error to win very small. Now, Pacers did what they did, 19-19 from the free throw line. They only gave up 5 points off of their turnovers. But you go on the road against a team and you let them shoot those types of numbers, that margin for error becomes even smaller. So I think defensively, listen, this is every coach in the NBA, as they game plan for Milwaukee and a star like Giannis, it's hard. It is hard to come up with, ways to slow him down. And I'm sure that Rick will give him different looks in game 3.
From a player standpoint, aside from the crowd, and aside from the fact that the chippiness of seeing the same opponent night in and night out, what feels different about the playoffs from the regular season, if anything?
It's the best time of the year, for me. I think that, the beginning of the season is incredible. Everyone's been training all summer. You're happy, and then you kind of can get into some doldrums. And then as the season progresses, you're battling for playoff positioning. And this is what you do it all for. And there's just a sense of accomplishment. This is why we are here. And for the Pacers, a team whose expectations have grown over the last couple of years, especially going to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, there is that expectation. There's a different demeanor. There is a realization of this is why we are doing the job that we are doing. And it is absolutely different. And Jake, you know, from following the Pacers all these years, and something that I didn't realize early on in my career maybe was that it really is exponential. You know, when you go from the first round to the second round to the conference finals, NBA finals, it's why you play the game. It's why the TV companies pay the contracts. It's why the owners pay the contracts to the players. It's why the fans go to the games and watch on television. It is just, to me, it is the best time of the year, and I think that you are seeing the best versions of all of these players.
Did you ever have guys that you either, Austin Croshere is our guest here, did you ever have guys that you either played with or against, you don't have to say names, but that had a fake swagger? Like they acted like they were ready for the moment, but deep down you knew, man, that guy's wetting his leg. He ain't ready for the moment. He's acting like it, but he's not. Did you ever have guys like that?
Yeah, you know, it's a good question. I don't think we had a lot of those guys. You know, I was fortunate all my years every year I played in the NBA, I made the playoffs with the exception of my last year. So, you know, if you have guys like that, in order to have that level of success, you are probably going to have guys that are like that. And I think that the personalities that you were describing, probably you're going to see more often on teams that miss the playoffs, or maybe in younger players that ultimately figure it out down the line. But again, I was just incredibly fortunate to be on either good teams or teams that played really hard. And I always felt like, you know, especially the reason why we had success early on with Larry was because all of the guys would get after it. You know, in that moment when they needed to step up, they did. And again, I'm not inside the locker room with this Pacers team, but you do have a sense that these guys are ready for that moment and making the most of it. And it's hard to always say why is a guy struggling, right? A guy that, you know, Reggie Miller had his occasional off night in the playoffs. That didn't mean that he wasn't, you know, a real guy who would get after it and wasn't afraid of the moment. But are you struggling just with your shot in that night? Are you struggling with the moment being bigger than you? And there's no question that there are players in the NBA where that is definitely a focus, and maybe not the number 1 and 2 guy on a consistent basis, but it's that 3 or 4 guy. And I think that's the difference with this Pacers team. You know, when you look at Nesmith and Nembhard and Mathurin coming off of the bench, like, you know, it is hard not to like this Pacers team with the way that they play really every possession.
The reason I asked the question, Austin, and I made this mention earlier, and I'm sure people are like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But I made the observation earlier that Andrew Nembhard has a little bit of Reggie Miller in him. And I don't mean in the level of the outstanding Hall of Fame career of Reggie Miller. But what I mean by that is Andrew Nembhard, when he hits a big shot like that, he's grown into now this confidence that he's got a little bit of swag in him, and he's got a little bit of dog in him. And you kind of need that, right? And you need a guy that doesn't outwardly say it until he hits a shot like that and then has a smirk like, yeah, I mean, that's why I'm here. It's all good. Do you see that in him? Can you see, as a guy that played professional basketball, can you see when a guy has an authentic, legitimate confidence?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, you're going to see it probably much earlier in that process as a teammate, someone that's kind of on that inner circle. And I'm sure that for guys that were on the bench or on the court, when he hit that shot or when he's hit shots, you know, in the playoffs last year, that guys are not surprised by it. Now, for me as a fan, someone watching it a little bit more of afar, you know, those moments resonate a little bit differently. And I think in large part it's because of the makeup of the team and having someone like Halliburton, who is really unselfish. Listen, there are a lot of star players and starting guards who in that moment wouldn't give the ball up. You know, they want to be the hero that makes the shot, and they don't want that ball to go to someone else. And I think that is leadership in a lot of ways, is recognizing what's in the best interest of the team, you know, having confidence. And I think that the Pacers' strength is much more in the collective than it is in any one individual. And I think that Nesmith, Nembhard, and in particular, Siakam hit a three right before Nembhard, and that's just a sign of this team. And I think that, what type of an environment does it take to create guys feeling that way, right? Because if Nembhard were to go to a team with a ball dominant guard and he doesn't get those opportunities, maybe he doesn't become that guy, right? But in the environment that has been fostered by Carlisle and Halliburton, he's given those opportunities and he rises to the moment.
When you look, Austin Croshere, our guest here, I'll tell you a guy that I see a little bit of Austin Croshere in, and then you can tell me that it's the dumbest thing you've ever heard, right? So I look back to when you were a Pacer, and in particular in that finals run in 2000 is where seemingly from the outside, and I'm not saying for you, but from a media perspective, it was like we could see the growth all come together for you, and the confidence was suddenly there where you're contributing night in and night out during that run. Jarace Walker, to me, is a guy that didn't get a lot of reps as a rookie and had to kind of wait his turn. And now, and even when he first got in, the game was moving a little fast for him. It seems to have slowed down. What is it like from your perspective, if that's even a fair analogy, but B, just the mindset of navigating through that metamorphosis as a player?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I would compare him to me as a player, but I certainly agree with
the
you
timeline.
Yes, and kind of that process of the confidence kicking in, and the game does feel very fast in the beginning, and it takes a moment for that to slow down, and it being fast. Lots of times people equate that with like a quarterback and reading defenses, and it takes a quarterback a while for that game to feel like it slows down, and it's the same thing in the NBA. And I've kind of said that, the two biggest pieces from last year to this year, like how do the Pacers get better this year from last year? And the two pieces were Jarace Walker and Benedict Mathurin. And, there were some injuries early on in the year, and there were some struggles with both of those players, but they were given this extended playing time, this extended opportunity, and slowly things slowed down for both of those guys. Earlier on for Mathurin, because he had played last year before the injury, and a little bit later for Mathurin. And then when those guys came back, now the pressure's taken off of him a little bit. And for me, I didn't play a whole lot my first 2 years just because of the makeup of the roster. They trade Antonio Davis. I get a chance to play. And it just, confidence is something that just builds and builds and builds. And the more moments that you have where your teammates trust you, and I remember early in my career, like, that year that you're talking of, like if Mark Jackson passed me the ball and I missed a layup or I missed a shot or it went through my hands out of bounds, Mark wasn't going to pass the ball back to me. It was like one and done, right? Like, hey, if I'm going to go to Reggie Miller, Rick Smits, Jalen Rose, Chris Paul, like, don't go throwing the ball out of bounds and give me a turnover. Don't miss a layup and mess up assist, right? And I remember, like, okay, Mark's passing me the ball. I better do something good with it. And then, you get that layup and you make that jump shot. And then it was almost like I knew I had made it when I missed the jump shot. And then Mark passed it back to me.
Right.
Like, he had that confidence. You missed the first one, you're going to make the second one. So for these young players, that really is all a part of it, is having the luxury of playing through mistakes. And I think, again, and I'm just using Milwaukee as an example of having, two incredible star players in Lillard and Giannis. There's not a lot of room for error and bringing guys along when those are your options. And again, it becomes like, when I say Pacers, like, they're just an incredible team. And in large part, it's because of that, because the opportunities that are given, how Rick sticks with guys. Mathurin, if things go a little bit south, he'll certainly pull him out of the game. And that's the case with Walker. And anytime you have second unit guys, that'll be the case. But he knows that they're going to come back to him, that they're going to get another chance. And I can just tell you, in my situation, having the ability to play through mistakes. Now you have to prove yourself to a point where you're left in the game long enough to play through those mistakes. But you're seeing that with both of those guys. And again, they are a better team than they were last year. I think in large part because of the struggles that they had at the beginning of the year, allowed those two guys to really get meaningful time and gain confidence of the coach and the other players. And then they had like that middle part of the year to bring everyone along. And then at the end, just kind of ramp things up for the playoffs. And I think that they're in a great place because of it.
By the way, you played 11 games late in your career as a Buck. That doesn't make you emotionally torn for this series, does it?
I actually kind of forgot I played 11 games for the Bucks.
Did you at least keep like some of the shooting shirts or shorts or anything?
I probably have something in a box somewhere. I played for the Spurs for I think 2 or 3 games, and I've got some of their stuff in a box somewhere. But I got my Pacers stuff on watching the game, so
well, that's
all
good.
that matters.
All right, here. Lastly, this is the most important thing, Austin. Austin Croshere, our guest. I was just in Long Beach for the IndyCar race, and what I love about LA is I'm fascinated by this, and I think I'm the only one that is. But I go to, like, this time it was the movie Halloween. I went to where they filmed like every scene in the movie Halloween from 1978, and then I met Peter Brady, and that was the ultimate, right? I mean, no offense to the fact you're on the show. So being an LA native and somebody that has the luxury of living now in Southern California for half the year, do you ever just get bored and decide that you're going to go around and go see like old movie scenes?
I can't tell you that I've done that consciously, although I will recognize things in movies when I'm watching them. Oh, that's down the block. Oh, that was filmed over here. One of the ones that I always think about is, I don't know if you remember Scarface.
Oh, yeah, of course.
In the early part of the movie, they're in the outdoor detention center that they all kind of break out of.
Is that in L.A.?
That was supposed to be in Miami.
I was going to say, because it's
Miami.
obviously supposed to be Miami, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but that was filmed in L.A. in an underpass that I go around every single time. And every time I make this big curve from the 405 to the 10, I look over and I'm like, oh, that's where the detention thing was. And then, the crime scene from the Simpson murders is down the street, from the house. And, it's just, it's very surreal.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Hang on. So you live near Bundy? We all know the address. You live near Bundy where Nicole Simpson lived, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, not far from there at all.
That's in Brentwood, and I can, not that I would know this, Austin, not that I would know this, but I do know this much, okay? At least I've heard this. I've heard that if you're a tourist in the Brentwood area and you ask people where Nicole Simpson lived, nobody will tell you.
I would think not.
They're all like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Why is this dork from Indiana asking about Brentwood? I don't know.
Now if this interview gets back to Brentwood, California, I'm gonna have angry people knocking on my door that I'm even talking about it.
Well, I think at this point everybody knows where it is. Although I will tell you again, I wouldn't know this, but I've heard the new homeowner has put a little wall up, so it's not worth your time to go past anyway, just for what it's worth. You know what I mean?
That is true. Yeah.
But okay, so then lastly, I want to know this: the last or the most famous person that has starstruck you when you're like walking around Ralph's picking up, Campbell's soup because you're not feeling well, and you turn the corner and there's some big celebrity in the middle of the grocery store aisle, and you're like, oh wow.
All right, so this is not the big by far, but this is the most recent. Yesterday, my wife and I drove to pick up, getting close to 50, picking up new prescription for my glasses. And I park and I get out of the car and I see Patrick Schwarzenegger from the White Lotus that was just on.
Nice. Now, was he picking up prescriptions?
I don't know what he was doing. I don't know.
Yeah,
he was like walking down the street.
It's like an everyday occurrence there, right? You know what he's saying right now, don't you? Right now, he's saying, like, yeah, I just went to go pick up some Metamucil, and Austin Croshere, former Milwaukee Buck, was standing there wearing an old San Antonio Spurs shirt, strangely enough. Yeah, see? It's all relative.
Sure that's exactly what he was thinking.
That's right. All right, Pacers up 2-0 on the Bucks. Austin Croshere, I know you got a lot to get to, so we'll let you get back to it in the fabulous weather out on the West Coast, and certainly look forward to talking to you again or seeing you when you get back here for the summertime.
I appreciate it, Jake. Anytime. Let's do it.
All right, Austin Croshere joining us on the program. I'm telling you, that's the crazy thing about L.A. is like you go – Eddie, you've been to Seattle. Have you been to Los Angeles?
Once.
You would love it,
Once.
Man. Every day looks like this outside, and it's so true. Anywhere you go. Now, I will tell you that – so I went several years ago to visit a buddy of mine that was living in L.A., and he was a doctor, and he's like, hey, I got to work, the Tuesday that I'm out there or whatever – for a little bit. And I said, okay, fine. And I had only been to LA like once before that. I mean, this was 20 years ago. And I said, well, I'll just tool around and find stuff to do. Well, I very quickly realized that I was in the neighborhood of where Nicole Simpson lived and where that O.J. Simpson alleged murder had taken place. Certainly there was a murder, but you get what I'm saying. And so I knew that I was like, wait a minute, her condo had to be around here somewhere. And I went into like a Verizon store. And I just walked in, and there's a guy working. He's like, "Can I help you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know this is kind of weird, but I know I'm in Brentwood. Like, do you happen to know where Nicole Simpson's place was?" And the guy's like, "Who's that?" Like, Nicole Simpson. It was the OJ murders that was like 10 years ago. He's like, "Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about." And I thought, well, this guy's, how in the world can this guy not know what I'm talking about? And then I asked a couple other people, and they're like, "Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about." And then, I realized, look, this is these people's neighborhoods and their community. I mean, I get it, right? It would get a little bit tired of having people coming and asking, and you forget that you're talking about where people live, and and I'm sure in their standpoint, they're like, yeah, okay, enough, dude.
So it's like Fight Club?
Correct. Correct. That's right. You just don't tell people, right?
Yeah.
Now, perhaps Austin's going to get in trouble because he let us know. But like I said, I mean, it was so well documented at the time. I mean, that trial was a year long, and I mean the Brentwood Bundy, it was said 50,000 times. I mean, literally 50,000 times. NFL draft set to get underway tomorrow. Some potential movement for the Colts that has been discussed. We'll get into that, and Casey Valier joins us from the Colts about 30 minutes from now. Now, we are within the window of the NFL draft where the rumors start flying galore. And the latest rumor, and again, oftentimes these quote-unquote rumors or reports are drawn up by agents. There are a number of different things that can come into play here.
Breaking news, 1.2 million people are in Green Bay.
That's right. Chicago's traffic is backed up now for 4 days because of everybody heading to Green Bay for the NFL draft, despite the fact that people are losing their shirt on their Airbnbs. Okay? Now, if you look at the draft, the one player, and this was kind of the situation a year ago. A year ago, Brock Bowers was the guy that really started to skyrocket in terms of talk heading into the draft of teams moving up to potentially take him. Because I think everybody knew once they went through all the process that, this guy is a star in the making and is going to be his skill set and his production at the college level.
Now listen, Jake, his athleticism is just off the charts. He's got a perfect RAS score.
High motor.
Yes, high motor, nice length. He's got a long wingspan, nice hand size. There, he doesn't have the little hands. Nice soft hands. He's got quick feet.
Is there anything here's the thing. I would rather fall out of the draft and go undrafted than I would to have it publicized after the combine that I had widow hands. Like Kenny Pickett, right?
Yeah.
If I had a hand size problem, I wouldn't want anybody knowing it for what it's worth. Just fine. I'll sign as an undrafted free agent. Just make sure that it's a small pin that you have me sign with. So, but a year ago, Brock Bowers was one that everybody knew was not going to be available to the Colts. Tyler Warren, it appears as though, is the name that is causing teams to perhaps start trying to, be that jackass in the right lane.
Whoa.
That's waiting, and you're like, look, everything's merging down here, and they're inching their way up, and they're just going to wedge their way in traffic. It feels like teams may be doing that to try to even move up to get Warren. And then that causes, if that's the case, for Colston Loveland, the tight end out of Michigan, that is, by all account, kind of a carbon copy, maybe a little bit light, quote-unquote, version of Warren. If that second tight end position, there is rumor now that teams are going to try to trade up in order to even get that one off the board. That then raises the question. The Bears are sitting at 10.
I don't see why they need a tight end. They have Cole Kmet.
You talking about the Bears?
Yeah.
Understood. The Bears are sitting at 10.
Uh-huh.
The Bears clearly are a team that has coveted, not unlike Chris Ballard, flipping picks into multiple picks.
Yeah.
There is some speculation that Indianapolis could package their 14th and then a later round pick to Chicago to move into 10 to secure themselves that they would get the second tight end and, as a result, vault in front of a couple of teams, or simply put themselves in position to vault in front of somebody that might have tried to trade into, say, Chicago's spot or between 10 and 14.
I have a hard time believing Chris Ballard is going to waste another pick to move up to draft a tight end.
That's fair.
Now, is Shane Steichen standing on the table in the green room and we're like, Chris, I'm putting my foot down. This is the guy I want. Go get him.
Well, I think it's entirely possible that that's the guy Ballard wants. And Ballard may.
Could be.
I truly believe this, Eddie. I don't have. This is strictly my gut. Okay? I have nothing, and I want to be very clear. This is not anything that's been told to me. I just, having been around it for a long time.
Yep.
I think Chris Ballard knew that his fate probably largely was attached to the quarterback play once he got. Chris Ballard is no fool. When it comes to the quarterback position, Chris Ballard, you could say, kept kicking the can on 1 year, end of career former franchise quarterbacks to buy himself time. Phillip Rivers, that they got for a year, thought maybe they could get 2. Now, Carson Wentz, he went and made that trade. And yes, Frank Reich probably had a lot to do with that. But Carson Wentz, it was thought that was going to be that finally they had addressed the issue. No more Jacoby Brissett, no more Phillip Rivers. We're going to get a multi-year starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And very quickly, Chris Ballard realized the owner didn't like Carson Wentz. And so Ballard then has to eject from that. And at the 11th hour, once again, is kind of rescued because Matt Ryan becomes available. Goes and gets Matt Ryan, thinks maybe he's still got some gas left in the tank, and then you find out, no, it's like he was done, right?
Yeah, he was on E.
So eventually they knew they had to address the quarterback situation. And he knew, after years of staving that and buying himself extra time, because how can you properly assess a general manager without a young franchise quarterback to work with? And after getting a reprieve because Carson Wentz was going to be that guy, but you can kind of pin that on, well, the head coach really wanted him and didn't explain that he has idiosyncrasies that were not aligned with what we wanted. So he gets a little bit of a pass there. So then he knows that Anthony Richardson, when he drafts him, going into that draft, whether it was going to be move up to get C.J. Stroud, whether it was going to be sit and hope that Bryce Young falls, whether it was going to be take Will Levis, whatever it might be, he knew that whatever quarterback he took in that draft was going to be the one that most likely Velcroed himself to in terms of that quarterback's growth. Then it just so happens the quarterback gets hurt, and then in year 2, the owner's hurt, to be honest with you. And the fact that the owner is not around with the frequency that he had been earlier in your tenure as a general manager. So you know that you now have gotten a reprieve a second and third time. But now that Jim Irsay, and thank goodness for it, for all accounts, both personally and football-wise, now that Jim Irsay is a healthy and healthier individual and is by all account more involved than he was this time a year ago, then while I'm not saying that it is absolutely without question the case, it could certainly be seen as a distinct possibility that what you have this year is a general manager that is going to be more expedited in his moves to have immediate payoff versus continuing to grow, because he knows that the sands of the hourglass are moving very, very quickly through, in particular if Anthony Richardson does not develop. And so what do you do but if you feel that you have to get a player that is going to facilitate for his development? Now, as we talked about yesterday, then the curveball to that becomes, is a tight end that guy, considering Anthony Richardson, by all accounts, Anthony Richardson as a quarterback is like Pedro Serrano in Major League. He gets in there, he looks like Adonis. He's absolutely sculpted. You fall in love immediately with the thought of possibility when you see the first 2 pitches that Pedro Serrano's taken in spring training, and he's hitting them 550 feet. And what does Lou Brown say? This guy hits it a ton. Why didn't anybody else sign him? And then they throw him a curveball, and he can't hit the curveball to save his life. Anthony Richardson shows up, and you're like, this guy runs a ton. This guy throws on a 65 yards on a rope. Why did anybody else move up to get him? Hey, throw him an 8-yard out. And you're like, oh, gosh, there's his curveball. Can't hit the curve. Can't hit the tight end. Can't hit the simple out. So do you, and that's what you have to weigh if you're Chris Ballard. It's a bit of a catch-22. It's a bit of a conundrum that he has to weigh out. Does a tight end become the missing link to the final step of development for Anthony Richardson and giving him that safety net? Or does drafting a tight end and then pairing him with Anthony Richardson as opposed to Daniel Jones completely waste that talent, because you got a guy that, unless it's the giant from Jack and the Beanstalk, they're not going to be able to catch any of the passes Anthony Richardson is throwing to him, right?
I think it's going to help them either way, Jake, just because when you listen to Shane Steichen talk, who was either slipped up yesterday or just very direct, was saying that this team needs a pass-catching tight end, and you hear Chris Ballard mention, I believe, multiple times now at the pre-draft, at the combine, after the season, that the Colts offense needs somebody who can win over the middle of the field. So whether it or not it's Anthony Richardson at quarterback, a tight end's going to help Daniel Jones. It'll help Anthony just because they need someone over the middle of the field that can win. They have Josh Downs. They just need another threat, so it opens up the outside a little bit more for Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman Jr. And, Jake, I think we discount a large deal. We haven't talked about it much since the season ended, but the back injury for Pittman last year, how severely hampered was he out there? And with 100% Michael Pittman Jr., does the offense look a little different? Does Anthony look better? Does Pittman look better? Do teams have to focus more on Pittman knowing he's healthy versus dealing with the fractured back that he was dealing with a season ago?
Now, the part about Pittman, you're right. I mean, the health there, but Pittman's an over-the-middle receiver, and you got to be able to hit the target, man. You got to be able to hit the target. Indianapolis Motor Speedway, right now, they finally did get underway. They had some problems with timing and scoring, but practice is underway. Practice is the wrong word, sorry. Testing is underway for the Indianapolis 500-mile race taking place right now. The only thing that I've seen so far is somebody blew an engine. I think it was Jack Harvey that had to be towed in, but I haven't obviously been able to follow extensively because we're sitting here on the air. But upcoming is going to be to start everything off for the month of May after the race that takes place in Barber. That is a week from this weekend. But the Sancio Grand Prix, which is on the IndyCar road course, kicks things off for the month of May in terms of the Indianapolis 500, and we have tickets to give away. Now, we're going to do this in a very simple fashion. Call in for a little get-to-know-your listener, but there is an Indy 500 trivia question that I will be asking. So you've got to know a little bit something about the Indianapolis 500. Now, I'll give hints. Don't get bent out of shape. But you are going to be put on the spot with an Indy 500 trivia question. But get to know your listener is even better. And we have how many to give away? A pair of tickets, right?
2 pairs to give away.
We'll begin with pair number 1 next at 239-1070. That's 239-1070. Your chance for tickets to the Sancio Grand Prix, and then we will continue talking Colts draft with Casey Valier at 2. of that we've been sharing throughout the course of the day. We'll get back into that in the 2 o'clock hour, including the inordinate number of text messages I received about something that people observed happening right in front of me that I can add some insight towards. But before we do that, we have tickets to give away for the Sancio Grand Prix.
There was a picture, by the way, Jake, by NBA Memes about the buck hunters.
Mm-hmm.
And they're in the picture, you and Shannon P. Walsh.
Of course.
And at least they got your good side is what I just put there.
Which is her, right?
No, I was talking about you.
Well, thank you on the...
You were looking to the left. That's your good side.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. That's your good side for sure.
And I'm freshly shaved today, so they're both good sides. Danny joins us on the program. Oh, Danny boy. Hi, Danny. How are you?
Hello. Doing great. How you doing?
Danny, I'll bet nobody's ever done the "Oh, Danny boy" to you ever, right?
Never heard that before.
Yes. Danny, if you don't mind me asking, how old a fella are you?
I'm 62.
62-year-old Danny. I'm going to guess that puts you somewhere around the graduating class of 1981 from high school. Is that right?
Well, it was 80.
80? Okay. And what high school was that, Danny?
Speedway High School.
Oh, by the way, have you seen the new football field over there, Danny?
Oh, yeah. The yard of bricks going down the 50-yard line.
Yard of bricks down the 50, and then the wing and wheel logo at midfield.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Now, Danny,
gorgeous.
Did you play baseball just out of curiosity?
No, sir.
Do you know anybody there that played baseball at Speedway High School?
Oh, yeah.
Do you know anybody that currently is involved with the baseball program at Speedway High School?
I don't think I do right now.
Here's why I ask. Speedway High School's baseball jerseys, I don't know if they still do, but they had white jerseys with the the brown and yellow, kind of like the old Houston Astros sunset motif, but it's the brown and yellow, and it just says Speedway or maybe spark plugs on it. And I'm in year 16 of a quest to try to get one of those jerseys. You got any pull?
I can make some. I got to make some inquiries.
You got some pull over there, Danny?
Yeah, I know some people that have pull.
By the way,
I wouldn't say I have.
So
pull.
Danny, you graduated, you said, in 1980 from Speedway, right?
Correct.
On a serious note, and albeit a little bit more somber, I realize, but by any chance, did you happen to recall?
I knew Mark Flemings.
Mark Flemings was a year behind you, correct?
Yeah. I was in gym class with him. A lot of my friends were in that last documentary.
And by all account, and obviously, Mark Flemings, by the way, for those that are unfamiliar, we're talking about the only of the four in the Burger Chef murders that took place in 1978 that was a student at Speedway High School. The others, I believe, Decatur Central. There were a couple of other schools involved. That doesn't by any means mean that he was, a better kid, whatever, than the other kids. But I might have we talked before about Mark Flemings, Danny, by chance?
No, we haven't. No.
Because you knew exactly where I was going with that is the reason I brought that up.
Wait, yeah, it's our class of 80 there. He was in our class, and in our gym class was. He was just a good kid. And that and the Burger Chef or the Speedway bombings, it just put a big,
Yeah, it was an
junior,
interesting
senior.
era. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously one that just had all. Speedway was a lot of the news then, but a great community, no question. And I did not obviously.
It was,
What's that?
I'll say this: on some of the docs I've seen, they kind of portrayed it as a dangerous, druggy place, and it was far from that. Most of the people I grew up with kind of refer to growing up in Mayberry, a little community inside the city. It was a great place to grow up.
Right. No, I think total. And listen, between the Brett Kimberlin stuff and then the Burger Chef stuff. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of embellishment and liberty by people outside the community on creating sauciness that will sell, which is not accurate
Correct.
as to what happened. All right, here's my trivia
Correct.
question for you, Danny. You ready?
Yeah.
Now, I need you to think around the era that you were in high school, okay? There's your hint for this, okay?
Okay.
Who's the only driver to have finished last in his first Indy 500 and first in his last Indy 500?
Jacques Villeneuve?
No, it's a fabulous trivia question, isn't it? Jacques Villeneuve, by the way,
Yeah, it's
finished.
a good one.
He was runner-up in his first Indy 500. Jacques Villeneuve has raced 3 times. He was runner-up in his first race. He won his second race, and then he came back and finished, I believe, 17th when he ran for Sarah
yeah,
Fisher.
that was in the 90s anyway. It wasn't my time.
Correct. You got one other guess?
Give me another one. Give me a
Okay.
hint.
How about this? The guy that I'm looking for the answer for number one, okay, he finished last in his first race and first in his last race. He also was the first driver to win the Indianapolis 500-mile race in 3 different decades.
Oh, Big Al.
No. You're really close.
No. Oh.
You're really close. Like really close.
Give me one more.
Guessing
Big Al's
Al
my
Unser
favorite,
is as close to correct when it comes to this driver as you could possibly
Rick
get.
Mears.
No.
Rick Mears.
No, Rick
No.
Mears was the second guy to win the race in 3 different decades.
Jeez.
This guy won it in 68, 75, and 81.
Oh, Bobby. God, dog it.
All right, Danny, hang on the line. We'll hook you up. Go
I
spark
am
plugs, all right?
ashamed. I'm ashamed. Thank you.
Danny, hey, listen, Danny, no offense here, right? We ain't 35 anymore. There's a lot of facts up in these noggins, aren't there?
Oh, yeah.
All
Way
right.
too many races.
There we go, Danny. We'll get Danny hooked up with that. So, yes, the question, by the way, that I got last night from a ton of people. The guys dressed up, if you watch the game, 4 guys dressed up like there were. I walked in with them. I mean, they were right behind me when we walked in. 4 guys sitting there in orange vests, orange hats. Now, I saw somebody write that they were given those seats by the Pacers executives. I don't know if that's true because those are regular season ticket guys. At least one of them I see fairly regularly at the games. And that group of seats on the floor there, that row, it's the same between the 8 seats that are there. It's the same 15 or 16 people. I mean, I'm assuming it's people that share the tickets. Maybe they are given the tickets by the Pacer staff. I don't know. But those seats, the 4 guys, they are obviously dressed up like buck hunters, deer hunters. It's deer hunting season, and the Pacers are hunting the bucks.
It's wabbit season.
That's exactly right. And one of the guys who is the mayor of Shelbyville, a little bit shorter stature guy, he's the one that had on the black and orange hat. And he was really kind of standing up, leading the Giannis countdown chant, or count up. And I was trying to tell him, dude, it needs to be count down. Eddie, that's your idea, the 10-1, right? But nobody apparently listens to the program or takes our advice. But the only thing, and I commend them on the creativity of their uniforms. Now, they did this last year, I think, also at the playoffs. Or maybe it might have even been in the regular season against the Bucks. The only thing I will say, I'm not going to say that the idea backfired. Kevin Porter Jr. was really snarking back at those guys over the course of the game. And Porter Jr., I thought, hurt Milwaukee. He hit a couple of big shots late. But for the most part, I thought Porter Jr. kind of hurt Milwaukee because he was taking some very unforced shots. Or let me rephrase that. I'm sorry. He was taking forced shots where he didn't unnecessary forced shots and got out of rhythm a little bit. But my only complaint with the guys dressing like the deer hunters to imply that they are buck hunting because the Pacers are playing the Bucks, they actually look like anybody from the state of Wisconsin. So I would think that if you didn't know any different, you would think, oh, 4 guys from Wisconsin came down for the game. Because whether you know it or not, that's how people dress up there. Camouflage vests and Carhartt jackets and flannel. I mean, flannel is literally the Dairyland tuxedo. If you've ever been to and I love Milwaukee, but I remember Shannon and I went to Milwaukee a couple years ago, and we went to Lakefront Brewing, and we're sitting there, and it was in December, and she looked at me and said, we're the only 2 people in here not wearing flannel. Everybody. And then every third person is wearing, because they just, oh, yeah, just got done. I had a couple of Ryanairs, and they were out. And so you get people like just showing up at work wearing camouflage and orange and buck hunting stuff because they've been out hunting all day. So that's my only thing is those 4 guys. So everybody was asking me, who are these 4 guys and why are they wearing orange? And I'm like, well, they're dressed up like buck hunters. Only problem being they're dressed up like half the state of Wisconsin. Colts draft Thursday. That's tomorrow. Casey Valier, Colts now radio organizer and Grand Poobah Broadcasting Colts division, correct?
Yeah, he fixes all the radios over
That's
there.
right. He joins us next. Two o'clock hour. 2 is the magic number in Indianapolis because Pacers have now won 2 games in the postseason. They are 2 games away from advancing out of round number 1. Tua, as Reb Porter used to say. But as we told you, 2 o'clock also, the hour that we're going to begin talking with somebody from West 56 about the Colts. We are within now 28 or so hours of the NFL draft getting underway and 2 million people descending upon Green Bay. Right,
Keep the 2 theme going. It is currently 2-2 in the Reds game against the Marlins, and it's a 2-2 count. It was a 2-2 count. Now, Miami just struck out the end of the inning.
What
with
inning
2
are
outs.
they in?
They're going to the top of the 5th. Reds are tied.
So they played 4 innings?
Yes.
You divide that by 2, what do you get?
2.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Casey Valier joins us on the program now. I'm sure thrilled to be doing so. Now, Casey, I had mentioned, because I always forget exactly, can you recite for me the long and impressive title that you hold within the Colts organization?
I am the coordinator of radio production, and I am still trying to figure out what that all means. So if you can help me along with that, Jake, I'd really appreciate that.
You guys produce some radio stuff over there, right?
That's right.
Okay, well, you're the guy coordinating all that.
That's what they tell me, even though there's times where I have no idea what's happening. So,
okay.
Hey, I'll take the credit.
Well, nonetheless, what it means is this, and that is that this time of year, I know you're busy, so I appreciate the time on radio about the draft itself. Just in we've been through this now for a number of years, and that came out the wrong way. But what I'm saying is, one thing about Chris Ballard that I have always felt, Casey, is that we naturally are cynical whenever we're talking to sports executives in preview of drafts or trades or those things, that they are keeping things close to the vest. And then oftentimes, especially in the draft afterwards, we look back and go, they were pretty honest about what their expectation or what their hope was. So if you were to summarize the things that Chris Ballard has publicly said regarding this draft and going into it, it would be the vibe of what?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because that's one of the things we always look for is you kind of look for those breadcrumbs, because he's not going to come out and say this is who we're taking. But if you do go back and listen, that is definitely something you find. And I'm really intrigued with what they do day 2 and early day 3, because he talked about the depth at this draft really is in the 2nd through 5th round. So you look at the Colts' needs, and I think a lot of it kind of leans into what this draft holds. A lot of the most talent, if you will, whether that be on the offensive line, defensive line, and tight end. You don't have that quarterback, wide receiver depth that you've typically had, which kind of fits the Colts model and what they're looking for. So I think, honestly, it's one of those things where everybody we know that Chris Ballard mentioned that, the way the board stacks up inside that draft room compared to where it stacks up inside, outside, it doesn't really line up. But I do think that everybody's kind of on the same page with the draft needs the Colts are looking for are probably going to align with what everybody is kind of pegging them to select, which I know it all falls into, what happens at 14. Are the Colts going to take a tight end? I'm assuming you're going to see a tight end come off the board pretty quickly from the Colts standpoint.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, Casey, is there anything that a breadcrumb, I like that word, right? Like, is there any breadcrumb that was dropped in front of you that you actually thought, that's a surprise? I did not anticipate that was something they were going to kind of tip their hand about.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I thought O-line was one that he mentioned, that when you look at the mock drafts, you have nothing on the lines, and that is a breadcrumb that I wasn't like I was not expecting to hear that, because you talked about we kind of know the MO of Chris Ballard. He's been here this will be his 9th draft, so we've kind of been able to watch what his, the things he really highlights are, and we know he builds within the trenches. So that was kind of a breadcrumb to me that kind of tipped me off of, don't just fall in love with at 14. It's got to be a pass-catching tight end. I do think that there is going to be an option that there's a handful of defense and offensive linemen that he might find there that you can never have too much of. And you got to remember, offensive line, the Colts did lose Will Fries and Ryan Kelly to Minnesota. And you have that question mark about where Braden Smith is from a physicality standpoint, missing last handful of games last season. So there's kind of 3 question marks on that offensive line that you can understandably look that maybe they try to address there at 14. So that is one of the breadcrumbs when he mentioned the line, that don't get too surprised if that's a position that he goes with there in 14.
Okay, the 3, I'll go with 3. The 3 positions of need for the Colts, at least from right now, that you look at and you say the 3 areas that would least surprise you. And we talked about tight end and line, but give me it just over totality of the offseason, the areas you feel most need bolstering.
Yeah, so I would definitely start there. I think defensive tackle is a pressing need, because I think you saw last year with Raekwon Davis and Taven Bryan, when they were in the football game, there was a big drop-off from what you had from Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner, and they didn't really make a big change there at all. They signed Neville Gallimore, who he played a good amount with the Rams, but he was a rotational guy. So I don't know if you feel like slam dunk, he's our 3rd D tackle and we feel really comfortable. So I wouldn't be shocked to see D tackle. Defensive end is always going to be one, too, especially what you've seen out of Kwity Paye to this point. We've got Samson Ebukam coming off of an Achilles injury. Typically, they say that the 2nd year off that recovery is where they're kind of back to full strength. So that would be the 2026 season. And then Leatu Latu coming into, his 2nd season. You lose Dayo Adengbo. I think you need to bolster that part. And then ultimately, I also, if you're going outside of what we mentioned with the line and tight end, I think safety is an area that you can see this team address. They got Cam Bynum, who's a big pickup from Minnesota in the offseason, but then you've got Nick Cross and then a bunch of unproven guys behind that. So I wouldn't be shocked to see those handful of positions, if you will, be guys to kind of look for throughout this couple days of the draft.
Casey, do you think that teams draft, or has Chris Ballard, I guess, either historically or through word, forecasted the possibility of drafting in preparation of players coming to the end of a contract and knowing that you're going to replace them?
Yeah, I don't know if they talk about it, but I think it's something that you have to look at because ultimately that's part of the game. You're building for now, but you also have to make sure you've got an eye towards the future too, because the world we live in, you see it in college football right now with NIL. I mean, all of college sports with the transfer portal and NIL, but then also in free agency, the amount of money these guys are getting going to the open market, you have to have an eye forward looking at, this guy's coming up at the end of his contract and what it's going to look like in the open market would be X, and I don't know if he's worth that. So you have to be able to slide a guy in there to replace it. And one of those areas this group has really identified very, very well is at linebacker. And this is going to be one of those telling years because, they watch E.J. Speed walk in free agency, and they've got Jalen Carlisle, a guy who's they're anticipating kind of stepping into that starting spot alongside Zaire Franklin, but you never know. So that's going to be one that you're going to kind of see if they had that eye towards the future saying this guy is going to replace E.J. next year when he walks. We'll kind of see that one kind of happen in front of our own eyes this coming year.
Jalen Carlisle is an interesting one because he's a recent draft pick. He was out with injury after a few games.
Right.
Linebacker out of Missouri. Chris Ballard, there's two ways to look at it, Casey. Casey Valier of the Colts is our guest. Sometimes they talk up a player because that they know that that's what that player needs. And other times they talk up a player because you genuinely feel that they like what they've seen out of that player. Seems to me Carlisle falls into the second group. Chris Ballard does seem to like him based on what he said. Agreed?
Yeah, no, I would agree. I think, honestly, it was one of those things where they looked at him because he was a safety at Missouri, and they thought, he can make that transition to linebacker. And I think early on he showed some flashes during OTAs and camp that you were like, okay, this guy can make that transition. And I think a handful of times where he had to slide in, you really did like it. Now, ultimately, when you talk about injuries, that is a buzzword in this city because there's a handful of guys with a lot of promise, but they can't stay on the field. So that is one area that I'm sure he needs to shore up. He needs to be able to be available. That's the best ability is availability. So if he can be on the field, I think that's one thing. But I do agree with your assessment on him. I think he is a player that they really do like, and it helps them when you look at this draft process because you know that you don't have to attack a linebacker early in the draft just to fill a need because you have a guy that you see some upside and promise in entering year two with Carlisle.
What position, from your observation, does it seem like the Colts either discussed the most or brought in the widest number of players in their pre-draft workouts, interviews, etc.?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would assume it is offensive line, and the only reason I say that is because of the losses you have during free agency, as we mentioned with Will Fries and Ryan Kelly. You've got the question marks in whether or not Matt Gonzalez can slide into left guard, if that's an area, or a right guard, or even if that's an area they want to do, because they drafted him kind of as that swing tackle. He played well at tackle. So you don't want to kind of hamstrung and get a guy stuck at a position, and all of a sudden he kind of he loses what they took him to be, because I think there is a part of him that they wanted him to be a tackle. Now, I'm not saying he can't slide in. He played a lot of positions at Pittsburgh. But I would say the offensive line is probably the area that don't be surprised if they address it with a couple selections over the next couple days. And that is an area that you can never have too many. And ultimately, if you want this quarterback battle to go off as well as you want, you got to be able to protect both Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones.
Casey, what's your guys' – when I say you guys, I mean – and I think most people listening know – obviously between, Jeff Gorman and Lara Overton and then, the television side of things that you guys do and Matt Taylor and, all of you that are working the media standpoint for the organization, what does your life look like for the next 4 to 5 days in terms of your coverage, what you have to do, the things that are planned, the things that you do after the fact, et cetera?
Yeah, no, it's one of those.
In other words, what the hell are you coordinating over there, Casey?
Exactly. This is what you're hired for. This is the time of the year that gets really, really fun and enjoyable because the draft, I always say, it's like the biggest thing of hope. Every team enters the draft with all kinds of hope on what's going to happen next year. And so the next couple days, it's super busy, but it's it's fun. We get to hang out with all the media members, your Mike Chappells and Stephen Holders of the world. We get to know them very, very well over the next handful of days. So me personally, I'll be kind of locked up at the Colts complex. I've got a little feature on the website and on YouTube. It's called Instant Reaction. Well, I will have essentially right after the draft pick is selected, I will go on camera with Rick Venturi and Bill Brooks, and we'll kind of break down the players selected and what it means for the Colts. We'll do that Thursday, Friday, and then a big recap on Saturday. And then we've got the big draft party at Lucas Oil. If you want ticket information, you can go to Colts.com on that one, kind of pumping up that first-round selection on Thursday, and that's where Matt Taylor's going to MC all of that. So it's a lot of, just diving into my biggest my reference point, if you will, is Dane Brugler puts out the Beast on The Athletic. I have that thing pulled up, and it tries to make me sound smart, like I know who these players are when they're selected, and I try to give the fans as much information as I can about those guys that are going to be Colts wearing a uniform here in 2025.
Yeah, I mean, now the other thing, obviously during the draft itself, there could be curveballs if the Colts trade around. Sometimes we've seen that.
Yeah,
I've seen some reports, Casey, and I want let me give you an observation, and then you tell me based on your being around it if you agree or disagree, and feel free to disagree here, okay? But I saw some speculation that Indianapolis could move up a few spots to secure a tight end if that's what they want, because they think that perhaps Loveland doesn't make it past 10. Indianapolis is at 14. Now, the only thing that I keep going back to is I keep hearing Chris Ballard's voice talking about how he feels like this is a draft that you can get quality players in rounds 3 and beyond, and that if you look at great tight ends in this league right now, oftentimes they were taken in rounds 3 and beyond, and that therefore, because he would covet what he can get in later rounds, he would not sacrifice to move up a few spots to get a desired player in round number 1. Am I overthinking that, or do you think there is some truth to that theory?
I think there is truth to both. I think you're spot on, especially when you talk about the tight ends. And he mentioned that this week, guys like Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews were third-round picks. George Kittle was a fifth-round pick. So tight ends can come from anywhere. But then I also go back to, the shift, if you will, in his mentality on how he's approached. We saw a different approach in free agency. He spent a lot of money, targeted a handful of guys, really pushed it over the finish line with Charvarius Ward and Cameron Bynum. So he's shown a little different side of what we are typical to seeing in Chris Ballard. So I could see both being on the table, but I agree with you. And my whole thing with everything is I'm not in those draft rooms. I'm not scouting these players. I want conviction. So if you think that this tight end is a top 5 to top 10 selection and you can trade up a couple spots and get him and secure him because he is exponentially better than the guy you get in round 2, round 3, then I say go for it. And it's one of those things that we haven't seen him do it a lot. We saw him trade up for Jonathan Taylor. We've seen how that has paid off in dividends. We saw him trade back, to get Quentin Nelson. So you've seen kind of both sides of that coin early in drafts, but I would not put anything past this year. It's one of those where in some ways I don't know really what to expect because we've heard that he's changing a mindset a little bit. We saw a change during free agency. So who knows? We might see a change here during the draft, and the Colts might be moving up. I know last year we saw in the Giants Hard Knocks, the Colts were interested in trading into that top 10. So who knows? Maybe they try again here in 2025.
Casey, just out of curiosity, is your middle initial R?
It is J.
Okay. Because if it was R, would you feel mandated that you got to drive a Honda CRV just to have a monogrammed car?
You are spot on, and that's why I drive an Odyssey. So I have the Honda. I just drive the Odyssey instead of the CRV.
But honestly, if it was called the Honda CJV, you'd have to buy it, right?
I would have to, 100%. 100%.
If they came out with a Yugo JLQ, I'd be driving that bad boy till the wheels fell off, which would be 12,000 miles, right?
Right, exactly.
I'd be all about it. I mean, it's a must, right? Lastly, of those folks that I mentioned, Jeffrey Gorman, Matt Taylor, Lara Overton, we'll throw Rick Venturi in there, all of them. Over the next, you guys are going to spend so much time together here over the next 2 days. Which one is the first to drive you nuts?
Oh, I mean, that's an easy one. Jeffrey Gorman drives me nuts about 3 minutes into talking to him, but I have a weird analogy on Jeffrey. He is the guy that you're like, man, I need to get away from him, but he brings the morale of the entire building up. So it's like it's a hard one because you want to get away from him, but then you're like, well, I feel better when I'm around this guy, and that's what Jeffrey Gorman is. He drives everybody nuts, but you got to have him around.
Does he know that that's your description?
Oh, 100%. I would tell him right to his face. He's probably heard me say that to him.
I think last time we had you on, he was sitting like right next to you while you were talking to us, right?
Yeah. Luckily, he's not. He's nowhere in sight right now, so that's good.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Lastly, so in terms of your guys' coverage, everything can be found. Especially after the picks have been made, stuff can be found from you guys where?
Yeah, so check out the Colts Audio Network. Anywhere you download your podcast, you can find all of the stuff that we put on the Colts Audio Network, Colts.com, YouTube. Search Colts. There'll be plenty of stuff. We'll have anywhere from videos and audio to anything. We've got, the players. It's kind of a weird week. We had players arrive in the same week of the draft. So we've got, current Colts players, in meetings and all of that stuff. There's video out. And then we'll have some draft prospect stuff coming up over the weekend. So we'll have all kinds of stuff for you as you're getting prepared for the Pacers trying to take out the Bucks.
Your middle name's not Jake, is it?
It is James.
Oh, okay.
It would be much better if it was Jake. We would have something in common,
Jake's kind of cool.
You don't want to be in common with this guy at all.
Trust me. Casey, I'm with you there. I mean, my name is Jake, and yet even with that, I aspire to be even more Jake with each and every day. So, yes.
Right. I understand that completely.
I don't know if you know this or not, Casey, but I love me some me.
Yeah, we do know that. I think the city of Indianapolis, and that's why they love you, is you love some Jake.
I just try to have that in common with everybody else. Casey,
Exactly.
Appreciate it. All right.
Of course. Hey, you guys have a good one.
Casey Valier, who was the coordinator of radio production for the Indianapolis Colts, talking about the upcoming draft. By the way, speaking of sporting events coming up here, we talked about the Sancio Grand Prix. A couple of things to pass along here. First off, looking forward to it on Friday. The Indy Ignite. Indy Ignite actually are one win away from securing, here in their first season of professional volleyball in Indianapolis, securing themselves a playoff berth. They have the chance to stamp that ticket coming up on Friday at the Fishers Event Center against Orlando. JMV is going to be broadcasting live out there. I'm going to swing by, join him, and then be at the game. I believe JMV will be giving away ticket opportunities for that. It is awesome. If you've not been to the Fishers Event Center, the facility in itself is awesome. And the matches themselves, I'm telling you, they do a phenomenal job of high energy from the start of the match to the end, but there is literally no lull. I mean, even when there's the game itself is very fast moving, but even when there's downtime, they are constantly doing stuff to just keep the energy level up. And it's great. I mean, this will be the fourth or fifth time I've been out there, and I'm looking forward to it. I know John's looking forward to it as well. And, the match gets underway at 7. They do not take long. I mean, they go pretty quickly. Pacers play then at 8 o'clock, so you'll have time still to be able to get home, watch the game, or go to one of the many places there in Fishers near the Fishers Event Center to watch. So that I look forward to. Also, one other thing to pass along that I wanted to mention today. I have mentioned before that Firefly, Indiana, which has been around for over 174 years. And I'm talking about, folks, a staple organization in, this community. Firefly is, just imagine this scenario. The police get called. They go out to a home, 2:30 in the morning. Mom and dad are in a fight. There's a domestic situation, and there are children in the home. The children, before they go into child protection services, if they are removed from the home for a safety standpoint, Firefly is a safe place where they can go, and they can live on a temporary basis where Firefly does everything to keep normalcy within the child's life. They go to the same school. They're able to, but it provides for them a safe place for them to live. In addition to that, for families in general, just the resources for families that are struggling, whether it be economically or in different, addiction circumstances, then Firefly is there providing light in the darkness. Thus why they've changed their name in the rebranding from the Indianapolis Children's Bureau. I've been out there. I've seen it. And I'm telling you, the work they do, the impact they do at the holidays for being able to provide Christmas gifts for the needy, all of the work that Firefly has done for 174 years in central Indiana is so critically important. And this is Child Abuse Awareness Month. And so in that capacity, I'm working as hard as I can with other great people to try to raise as much money as possible for Firefly. And they were offered an opportunity for a donor that came along and said, if you can raise up to $10,000, I'll match every dollar that you raise. Now, my friend Bruce Kidd, who is a tremendous and philanthropic guy in Indianapolis, has issued basically a challenge to his friends. He donated $500 at the beginning of the month. He has added to that again and again, made another $500 donation today in challenging people and his friends to match what he has given to get them to, because they're close here. We're about 70% of the way with a week left in the month to getting to the goal of getting the money for Firefly. But every dollar matches. Every dollar matters. So even if you can give $1, literally, if you're listening right now to my voice and you want to make a donation, you can either go to my Twitter account on the pinned tweet. That's at Jake Query. So x.com/Jake Query is where you would find that. Twitter.com works as well still. Or if you want to text me at 317-523-9288. 317-523-9288. If you want to text me, I will send you the link where you can make a donation, even if it's just $1. Every single donation counts, and I would be thrilled if you were able to do it, and I'm certainly appreciative simply of the consideration. When we come back, Rick Carlisle last night got really upset at James Boyd. Not at James particularly, but at the question James Boyd asked and the topic that he brought up, having to do with something that was mentioned yesterday about Tyrese Halliburton. Halliburton chimed in as well. I'll tell you about it, and you'll hear it from their words next. Pacers found themselves in a spot where they needed a shot. Milwaukee had closed it down. There was this nervous energy in the building. Everybody from Fountain Square to Broderpool to Southport to Whitestown, everybody is waiting to see what's going to happen. Andrew Nembhard delivers. Nembhard delivers, and then Nembhard does a little Reggie where he's like, you know what? All good, man. All good. Andrew Nembhard has some dog in him. And he showed it last night. I love the little, slight swagger from him, right? And I've mentioned that it is a position at Andrew Nembhard. I'm talking about his size only. I'm talking about when I say Andrew Nembhard. I'm like, Nembhard is a guy, and I've said this for a while. For a long time, I've said, Andrew Nembhard is at a position where I'd like to see somebody that's like 6'6", 6'7". But yet what I have overlooked is the old adage that it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. And Andrew Nembhard's got some dog fight in him. And last night he hit that three, and then he just kind of sits and smirks. And he was the last one to celebrate it. And then you say, maybe Nembhard is a little underrated. As opposed to the rest of the NBA at The Athletic and a quote-unquote anonymous survey that all said that Tyrese Halliburton is overrated. Halliburton delivered last night. Halliburton played well. Halliburton made shots. I do think, and dare I say it when they're up 2-0, I do think that there are possessions that Tyrese Halliburton at times can get overly creative, where he needs one less flash, one less move in order to, sometimes the open lane is right there. You got to take it and not try to do the extra pizzazz move or spin or whatever it may be. It's being nitpicky, but the further you go in the playoffs, the more important every possession is. And you can't have possessions in the playoffs that are wasted. And Milwaukee last night had more wasted possessions than did Indiana. Two things that come into play for the Pacers. Number one, at times, Halliburton does get a little bit careless with the basketball. Again, nitpicking here because he was brilliant last night for the most part. Number two, people can talk all they want about Miles Turner, and he's soft. Miles Turner isn't physical enough. How is Miles Turner your starting center and he only comes up with X number of rebounds? What people don't see or don't pay attention to is how often Miles Turner facilitates rebounds elsewhere. Miles Turner is remarkable at keeping loose balls off of a rebound alive. If he knows that he's out of position or he knows that he's getting, because he's too soft, pushed to the side, he has an incredible ability to keep the basketball alive by batting it to a Siakam or a Nembhard in traffic. And he had a couple of huge in-traffic rebounds last night. Turner in this series has absolutely shown his value towards, I don't see any way, shape, or form how they do not bring him back. If you are somebody who has been saying that Miles Turner is expendable or not physical enough to play the level that Indiana needs him to play, and that he's a weakness for the Pacers, if you are somebody who has been saying that Miles Turner is somebody that they don't need to bring back next year, then you have not been watching what Miles Turner's doing in the 2025 playoffs. He is way, way, way too important towards what it is that they want and need to be. But back to Halliburton and the comments about him being overrated. Last night, did it put a chip on his shoulder? Tyrese Halliburton addressed that after the game last night. What say you, Halliburton, about being the Athletics Anonymous survey amongst your peers listed as the most overrated player in the NBA?
All I care about is his locker room and winning games, and we're in position to go to Milwaukee and continue this series on. So not too worried about that. I know I am. I'm confident in my own skin and not worried about what anybody thinks. My teammates trust me. So does my front office, my coaching staff. So I'm good. I could care less.
He did have a breakaway dunk where he then yelled at the ball, which was cool. Now, Halliburton there, pretty poised, Pretty matter of fact in his answer. Rick Carlisle, on the other hand, not as passive. James Boyd asked him, Rick Carlisle, his thoughts on the survey about Halliburton.
I heard about this, and the other guys on the list were Jimmy Butler and Giannis. All right, and I want to see the guys' faces that voted those guys. I want to see the faces of those guys. All right, this is a poll. Not everybody even answered in the poll. All right, guys were able to answer if they wanted to. They were asked on camera or with a microphone. The whole thing's okay, and it's just it's really a shameful thing. It's just a shameful thing. All right, Jimmy Butler would be a finalist for MVP if he had gotten to Golden State a month and a half earlier. I mean, what that guy's done. And Giannis, are you kidding me?
Now, the thing about Jimmy Butler is this. He's a great player. And you want to talk about, I talked about Andrew Nembhard having a little bit of dog in him. I mean, Jimmy Butler's like, get out of the way. He's a get the hell out of the way guy, right?
That's a pitbull.
Totally. He is a get out of my way, I'm taking this game over guy. But doesn't seem overly concerned with the regular season. So if you're asking people that question in November, I could see them saying Jimmy Butler. Giannis. Without question, that entire survey is deemed irrelevant and non-trustworthy when Giannis is announced as an overrated player as voted by his peers. What are they watching?
And Jokic is an underrated player? Like, come on. He's a 3-time MVP. He's been in conversation all season long about being the best player.
I mean, that's probably they're probably saying that as a compliment. Like, hey, I know he's an MVP, man. You still don't realize how good he is, that kind of thing. But Giannis, I'm telling you, and I understand it, and maybe this isn't the market for me, especially right now, to preach it. But Giannis, in terms of, if you really look at, I mean, his athleticism at his size is absolutely unbelievable. I know that a lot of people are like, how many steps does he take? And I'm like, 2. But his stride is insane. And so you don't realize, because there's no way that a guy from 18 feet out gets to the basket with 2 steps. But he does. I mean, he's a fabulous player. Now, maybe like pull-up outside shot is not an area of great strength for him. And free throw shooting. Do you know why so many players struggle at the free throw line? Shaq.
Touch.
Wilt Chamberlain. Giannis.
Not having touch, almost as if their hand is too big for the ball.
That's
and they
exactly
can't
it. That's exactly what it is.
Get it positioned at a comfortable.
It's exactly what it is, because what do you learn when you shoot free throw? I think a lot of people overlook this. I know that I'm stating the simplistic and the obvious, but I think a lot of people overlook this. When you are a kid and you're learning how to shoot free throws, what do? They put the ball in your hand, and then they tell you to line your fingertips up with one of the linings of the basketball and to get touched by rotating the ball so that you can see the way it goes over to get touched to the basket, right? And you can do that because you roll the ball out of your hand with your fingertips. Imagine if your hand is so big, try doing that with a grapefruit. Shaq with his free throws, when you watch Shaq shoot free throws, he essentially shot puts it. Because to his hand, it's a shot put. Now, when you watch Giannis, and yes, it is ridiculous that they give him the time to sit there and do the 2 warm-up shots. Maybe every player is afforded that and just doesn't exercise it. Tyrese Halliburton and Andrew Nembhard are 2 guys that seemingly shoot the free throw within like 2 seconds of getting the basketball. Halliburton actually will kind of take a deep breath and look up, I guess. But maybe Giannis is doing that just to prepare himself for the challenge of getting rotation on the ball when his hand is too big for exactly that. I don't know. But yes, And so his outside shot maybe suffers a little bit in that as well. But he hardly needs it because of his ability to so quickly and so effortlessly get to the low post and either dunk or lay the basketball in. I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
He looks very uncomfortable, too, when he shoots those free throws. It's like
He does.
All right, I need to get my elbow here. I need to get the elbow here. And need to put the ball here, and then I'm going to shoot it.
You know, if it weren't for the fact that he does those things and then the perception of favoritism, he's a pretty likable dude. When they won the NBA and he was driving around going to Chick-fil-A's with the Larry O'Brien trophy in his car and like putting it on Facebook Live so people could find out where he was and get their picture with the trophy, it's pretty cool. We have tickets to give away. Sancio Grand Prix, that is the road course IndyCar race that opens up the month of May officially, at least from an Indianapolis standpoint, because the first weekend of the year, they're going to be racing at Barber Motorsports Park down in Birmingham.
You're right. May is a total year.
But we are, what's that?
May is a total year. That's right.
What do you mean?
It's like a year. There's so much that goes on.
It is the best, man. So here's what we're going to do. 239-1070, the telephone number. If you would like to go to the Sancio Grand Prix, we have a pair of tickets to give away. We'll do it like we did last time, and that is little get to know your listener with a 500 trivia question thrown in. 239-1070. That's 1070. We'll do it on the other side. Sancio Grand Prix will get things kicked off for the month of May. We've got tickets to give away for the Sancio Grand Prix. We will do so now at 239-1070. Who do we have dialed up for this fabulous prize?
Well, we have another Eddie dialed up, Jake, but I feel like we should go with Justin first because he's been hanging with us for over an hour, and he's been on hold listening to us yahoos. Yip yap.
Is he awake still? Justin,
Hello?
how are you?
I'm doing very well, sir, and yourself?
I'm good. I'm always uncomfortable when people call me sir because I'm probably old enough for that now, but I'm certainly not distinguished enough. But I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Justin, you have been waiting patiently for quite some time. Are you a working man, Justin?
Yes, I am. I'm sales.
Sales, okay. Working hard today, obviously, right?
Yeah. I'm waiting for one of my clients to show up to an appointment.
How are sales going? You didn't get stood up by chance, did you?
No, they're just running late.
Okay. Everything going okay in the world of sales?
Yeah. No, it's great. New home construction is booming, and everybody needs window treatment. So
fair enough. All right. Okay, so Justin, here's my question for you. On a 1 to 10 scale, and certainly I will not be offended by your answer here, your level of fandom for the Indianapolis 500 is what?
11.
Really? Well, then it sounds to me like the trivia question I'm about to give you here is going to be a layup. How old a fella are you?
I'm 49 years old.
49 years old? Okay. The first year you went to the Indy 500 was what year?
Oh, I would have been in 6th grade, so that would have been what? 80.
Well, who won the race? Let me ask you that. The first year that you went.
Oh, it wasn't the race. The time I was there was carb day with my father.
Oh, man. That had to have been fun in its own right, right?
Oh, the stories I could tell.
So you're
about
49 years old. That would put you roughly 3 years behind me. I'm guessing somewhere around 88 would have been the correct answer there, right?
Yeah.
If not, just work with me and say yes.
Yes.
Okay. Are you going to the race this year?
That is the plan. I plan on being down there all 3 days.
And you are the man. All right. So you do. I mean, you do it up right. You don't mess around with this, right?
I did 22 carb days in a row before COVID.
Okay. That's pretty awesome.
It broke my heart to break that streak.
Oh, that streak should still continue now.
Here's the best way to say it. Say that stat again for me, Justin.
I went to 22 carb days in a row before COVID.
Oh, then you went to 22 consecutive available carb days, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, so have you been every year since COVID?
No.
Okay.
Once the streak broke, there was a couple.
But there was no carb day the COVID year, right?
Technically, yes.
Yeah. So see. Okay. Here's your trivia question.
In there somewhere.
Here's your trivia question. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Mario Andretti has won both the Indianapolis 500 and a Formula One World Championship. Okay? There are 4 other drivers in their career that have won a Formula One World Championship and the Indianapolis 500. Name any of them.
Jacques Villeneuve?
Jacques Villeneuve is correct. Now, can you name any of the others? Villeneuve. Okay, how about this? Which did Villeneuve win first?
I'd say F1.
No, he won the 500.
No.
And if you listen to the ABC broadcast, Sam Posey says this will lead him to get Formula One teams to make million dollar offers for his services. And that was correct. He won the 595 and then went off and started trying his luck at Formula One, where, of course, his father had run. And it was not long after that for Jacques Villeneuve when he won the Formula One World Championship. 1997, he was the Formula One World Champ. Any others you can name?
Was Gil de Ferran one?
No, good guess. We're going to hook you up with the tickets, though, Justin, so hang on just a second. Eddie, you said that you knew the answer. What's your guess?
Juan Pablo Montoya. I don't know if he won a F1 Series championship, though.
He did not win a world championship.
Yeah.
But, yes, he did go to Formula One.
I know Ericsson and was in F1 as well, but don't think he won a world championship. Same
Correct.
for I can't even remember his name right now. I'm having a big mental.
Fernando Alonso was a two-time world champion in Formula One, but he did not win the Indianapolis 500 despite coming over and running it. There are others. Nigel Mansell came over as a Formula One and kart champion. He did not win the Indy 500, however. Juan Manuel Fangio tested at Indy but never actually qualified for the race. Nelson Piquet was a Formula One world champion, was injured in a devastating accident that took place at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I mentioned Mario Andretti. Jim Clark.
That Mario was the one I knew, by the way.
Graham Hill. Well, I gave him Mario. And one other one, Emerson Fittipaldi. Emerson Fittipaldi, your answer. John is on remote today. Is that correct, Eddie?
That is a accurate statement by you, Jake.
Okay. And do we know where John is for broadcast purposes today?
I think it's Behringer's.
Behringer's? Okay.
Yeah, Behringer's, yeah.
Plenty that he will get to, I'm sure,
That's
including
on Meridian Street.
Talking about game number 2 last night. That was an awesome environment. It was a raucous arena. It was loud for sure. There was nervous energy in the building, very nervous energy. For me, the nervous energy was not the fact that Milwaukee had narrowed that lead down to within a possession, but rather the fact that, call me crazy here, part of their run that chipped away at the lead and got it down there to within 5 and then ultimately 2 was Damian Lillard hitting a deep 3, because he is just one of those guys, and I know that he has not played in 15 games. I know that he's coming back from, conditioning and all of that. But he is, without question, one of those guys that you just don't want him getting comfortable, because you see it with shooters. Shooters, sometimes, as soon as they taste it, then, and you saw it in the All-Star game last year when it was here at Cambridge. Now, he was the only guy that kept shooting, and it got a little ridiculous. But when a guy starts feeling rhythm, that sometimes is a difficult thing to lose the grasp of, and you just don't want – and I was worried, because you know that Giannis is a guy that clearly, with each possession, can score. And so you can live with that. You can live with the fact that Giannis, either you foul him or he goes and has to drive to the basket and get a 2. You try to contest it. But if you start knocking down threes to complement that, that's when things – Bobby Portis did a good enough job of that by himself. I was very worried about – and give credit to Bobby Portis. Bobby Portis, I think, is an instigator in 2 ways. Number one, he magnetizes towards trouble. Things get a little bit chippy, and they did yesterday, last night. He's right there in the middle of it, but he has crazy eyes, frankly.
Ramon Grosjean.
Not a world champion. That's who you're thinking of. Yeah. Bobby Portis has crazy eyes.
100%.
You look at Bobby Portis, and he looks at all times like it's kind of he looks literally like a deer in the headlights, to pardon the pun, because they're the Bucks. But at the same time, he is one of those guys, I hate to kind of admit it, but I said it earlier. There was an irony in the fact that as the crowd is chanting Bobby sucks because they want to get on Bobby Portis because they can't stand him because he's an instigator, as they're chanting it, they pause just long enough to cheer for Lance Stevenson because he was a crowd favorite and was at the game last night. And you know that every other fan base had to think of Lance Stevenson as Bobby Portis, right? But Portis is, I don't know that Lance Stevenson was necessarily, I shouldn't say he wasn't starting friction. He's going around blowing in guys' ears. That's kind of the same thing. But Portis last night, that was as good a game. For him to get 28, how often are you going to get that if you are Milwaukee out of Bobby Portis and the way that he was able? He was feeling it from a shot standpoint. They were going in for him, and now you would think eventually you're going to get that out of Lillard. You just need to make sure that you're containing it to 2 guys. If Lillard gets going on a night when Portis gets that again and Giannis gets 36, then you're in trouble. Tomorrow's the NFL draft. We will be talking plenty about that. Tony East will join us to talk about the Pacers-Bucks playoff series, but we shift a little bit towards what's going to happen some 27 hours from now. JMV, I know we'll be talking about both of those things as well. and he will be doing so, carrying you home until 6 o'clock tonight. Thanks to Austin Croshere for his time earlier today, Casey Valier as well, and James Boyd. And thank you for listening to Query & Company.